Hello and welcome to An Ear to Listen. Today's guest is my brother, Pogg, and our topic of the evening will be role-playing games. Pogg, you have the floor.
Okay. Oh. First off, let me introduce myself. I'm Pogg. And have you ever had it explained to you the loving, saving grace that of our Lord and Savior, St. Cuthbert? See, the Church of the Cudgel of St. Cuthbert is... Now you might, if you're familiar with the D&D pantheon, you know, and I know today's subject is about role-playing, but we're gonna be drawing heavily, or I am, from D&D just because that's my jam. But if you're familiar with the D&D pantheon, you know who Pelor is, and you know St. Cuthbert, you know Hieronius and Hextor and Neril and Vecna. He's a big one, Vecna. A lot of people are Vecna fanboys these days, but you may be asking yourself, well, why is he talking about St. Cuthbert, such a holy light, and not Pelor? Well, let me tell you about St. Cuthbert. Because St. Cuthbert's justice is a retribution. It's a reckoning. You have something coming to you, he's going to make sure you get it. He's the one that makes sure you get your just desserts. And in role-playing in general, I wanted to actually talk about role-playing pantheons more or less. It's a two-edged sword. I was talking about earlier before we got going about the idea behind how people's when you create your own campaign, when you homebrew in role-playing, whether it be LARPing or you're creating a video game, a lot of people take their MMOs pretty seriously. I've seen people get on there and straight up say, you can't join this guild if you're not going to role play and things, you know. Ultima Online used to be a really big one.
Second Life.
There you go.
People are like that on Second Life. There are videos on YouTube of people breaking into like clubhouses, and they're funny as shit, man. Where they're not supposed to be, you know, and people take that seriously, you know, because they're like, if you're not a part of our club, if you're not a part of our gang, then you got to get out of here. And he's like, what are you gonna do, man? You know,
you gonna kill my avatar? I mean, we're gonna dox you on Reddit. We're gonna find your real house, who you really are. We're gonna kick open your door. You know, I mean,
I'm gonna fry your router, bro.
I mean, you know, there's a strong chance of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
people take it seriously, though.
Well, I mean,
Well, and that's possible, too. If you piss off the wrong person, yes,
they may come and find you. I mean, like, ARGs on YouTube, you know, I've seen some of those kind of go south. I've heard stories of some of those go really south, where the guy who made the person or persons who made the ARG feel like either you're not taking the ARG seriously enough, or maybe you're just a little too smart of a player and you're outsmarting the creators, so they go as far as to figuring out who you are and then Google Mapsing your location and then sending it to you in a bit folder with the picture of your house. A satellite
to be a dick.
Of your house and being like, boom, you know.
I'm outside your house.
Yeah, they're Amazon, you know, they're Amazon delivery, you know, they're like, we're in your home.
Yeah, they just...
I mean,
right. Yeah, that's something I never took into consideration.
Oh, well...
You know, that somebody in an ARG or something, if somebody's messing with you, they totally could just get the Google Maps Street View, and after figuring out your address and taking a picture of it and just cropping out the Google watermark and sending it to you to make it seem like, yeah, I've never considered that that's what they do rather than actually showing up. Man. You know, I was just always like, oh, you know, they're showing up. No, you're totally right. That's probably
There
it.
was one not too long ago, an ARG called Jack Torrance, where the creator or creators of it actually did that. They tricked people who were playing the ARG into giving them just enough information that from that information they were able to decipher who these people really were, and then made an
Mm-hmm.
actual well, they put it on a flash drive. Sorry, my birds are loud. But they put it on a flash drive. They did a whole bunch of Google Maps of these people's houses and then put the pictures on a flash drive and sent it out to and then like, did like a dead drop type thing. And one of the players went and got the dead drop, got the flash drive, put it in, and saw all the and found that folder. It was hidden. It was encrypted on that flash drive, and found that folder with all their locations on it, and it freaked him right out. He was like, "Okay, this
That's
is
crazy,
going.
man.
This is getting outrageous." Yeah. So
Well, all right, let's take it back for a minute. That just shows how dedicated people get to role
well,
playing
yeah.
games.
I mean, you got you even got like like Unred Dead Redemption 2, online. You got your different tribes, you got the Smoky Mountain tribe, you got
Oh yeah,
the Reaper Lords and stuff. And some of those groups on that game, uh they get so dedicated to it that they almost become like
they're like
they almost
outlaws.
become like MCs on those games. And there's like an interview I was watching one time where one of the guys was talking about the actual leader of the Reaper Lords, and he said that guy could show up to my house tomorrow and tell me who he is, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I know it's you," and he'd have run of my house. Yeah,
That's
I was like,
crazy.
"Whoa, that is a tightly knit group on that game."
That's like almost like real outlaw shit.
Yeah, like, yeah. So people get
That's crazy.
really involved in their role playing, and
Into it, yeah.
and TTRPGs, tabletop RPGs are probably the most notorious for it because it's easy on like a video game, for instance, to either go with the RP element and join a group and everybody, kind of virtually LARPs, if you will, on there. Or you could just be
Sure.
that, that you could be the sweaty kid who just grinds the game and is really good. It's got all the good stuff. And he's like, "Don't mess with me. Don't mess with me. I got the power of anime and God on my side." So like
Yeah.
you have those options there. My birds, man. Anyways, you have those options there, but like in role playing, like in TTRPGs, if you don't take it seriously, if you're that player who's staring into your phone when it's not your turn and just being like, yeah, during the role play aspect of it, and then when the combat actually happens, then they buck up, and then they only take notice when it's their turn, and then they go back to texting or whatever. You take away something
Yeah.
from the game.
I agree. Well, and that's something that you tried to convey to your son and I when you started playing with us too, that we didn't necessarily take seriously. And now it's something that I do take seriously now that I've been playing it for a while. Like I come into the bedroom and hole myself off, you know what I mean? So that I can get into the mindset. And after you've been playing it for a while, like I said, we didn't necessarily take it seriously in the beginning, but after playing it for a while, you understand the concept of like the idea behind how people would dress up as their characters when they, like back in the day, when they'd come to sit around at the table because they take it seriously. I get the mindset behind it.
It is.
Because it is easy.
Important. Yeah, I mean, it is a very important, and maybe it's too important sometimes because there are those RPG horror stories of people who freak out on one another. Like there was a dude I read in an article like a long while back when people used to read newspapers, about how uh, some dude's character he had for like 12 years. His player character, his PC, died in a campaign that had been playing for 12 years with his game master. I refer to him as DMs, but to broaden it for all
Game master,
TTRPGs, we'll
right?
call him the GM. Is him and his GM had been playing for so long, and he died, and he stabbed his GM over it.
What?
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
Dang.
But, you know, how does all that factor into what, you know, how I started this off, you know, my intro about St. Cuthbert and a pantheon? Well, because if you're going to effectively homebrew your own campaign, you know, and I don't want to say all TTRPGs, you know, whether it be like Call of Cthulhu or Vampire the Masquerade, those are two big ones too. And really, you could say Vampire the Masquerade, but to be fair to that particular, you know, TTRPG, you would really refer to it as a World of Darkness, because they've got so many interconnecting TTRPGs that fit within that one genre. Think of it as kind of like the Lord of the Rings series, you know. It's Lord of the Rings, but you've got Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and Return of the King, you know. So World of Darkness is more like calling it Lord of the Rings, and then you'd underneath of that you'd have Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, and they've got like 5 others too. They got like several that just fit within that one subgenre of World of Darkness. But Vampire the Masquerade is definitely the granddaddy of them. And you know, so if you're gonna homebrew your own campaign, it's easiest with D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, for sure. Because it's, I don't want to say not necessarily pigeonholed, but it definitely has the more broader tools that effectively allow you to just take what they've put in their books and say, well, okay, I like this, I don't like that, you know. And when you look at it like that, it's almost like a religion in of itself, you know, when people in real world look at religions, different religions, and they say, well, I like that, so I'm going to pay attention to that, but I don't like this, so I'm going to toss this out of the book and pretend like it doesn't exist.
Well, treating it like guidelines rather than
Law,
law,
yeah.
I guess, is the idea that you're
Exactly.
getting at.
And, you know, Gary Gygax never really intended for his games to be law, you know?
Well, no, the original iterations of Dungeons and Dragons before it was even advanced Dungeons and Dragons were very, very vague.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know what I mean? They were meant for interpretations. He didn't care.
Yeah, he just,
you know?
he even said it himself, you know, the greatest secret that we should never tell the DMs, you know, is that they don't really need our rules. You know, that they just, and that's not a direct quote, but it's something along those
fair,
lines.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like a paraphrase.
they just
I guess.
need the basic understanding of how the game works, you know. And so, if you're gonna homebrew your own campaign, you know, in my opinion, I think, and with the campaign that you're still a part of, and that, you know, my son is still a part of, and our friends, I spent 6 months just developing it. I didn't just throw it out there right away with an idea, which there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's different kinds of styles when you're going to be the GM. There's several different styles. You got the real methodical, thought out, you know, everything must fall into place. It's like, it's like dominoes, as opposed to, I'm going to do this and I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants, and we're, you know, and I'm just going to come up with stuff on the fly as we go, you know. And in both styles, I mean, you know, neither one are wrong per se. That it's a very gray area.
Right.
However, I think, and it's just in my opinion, that I think that one of the first things you should come up with is a pantheon. You know, how did your world, this world that you're going to invent, how did it come to be? Who's in charge of it? And how does that affect the cultures? And if you nail down those things first, then you've got the bones. You've got the skeleton of what it is, and then you can add your organs, your nervous system, the meat, the tendons, you know, all that, all the rest of what makes everything work. Really, I can't see how it wouldn't depend upon your pantheon. You know, the pantheon, and there's this discussion right now. Like I said, this is kind of like a double-edged sword topic. There's this discussion right now, and I'm not saying the people who believe this are wrong. What I'm saying is that I don't see how this would work. Is let's get rid of alignment. Let's not have alignment in our games, especially in Dungeons and Dragons. You know, in Vampire the Masquerade, I can kind of understand everything kind of being a gray area. In Call of Cthulhu, I mean, that's cosmic horror. You're taking on something that is ultimately looking for the destruction of all of reality and all of existence anyways.
Right,
So,
cosmic horror.
Yeah.
Well, what separates the first one from the others, out of curiosity? Because I'm not familiar with that
Vampire
one.
the Masquerade,
some of the people watching this might not either.
With Vampire the Masquerade and Call of Cthulhu, for instance, especially those two, alignment is kind of a gray area. You can be ultimately virtuous and so in Call of Cthulhu, you can make a character who's ultimately virtuous. You think of like a young rookie cop who just got out of the academy and he's ready to uphold the law.
Be all that you can be.
In that sense, or an army vet who went out, served his country, he's come back home, and these are the people, your typical heroic type of personality. They just want to do right for good sake, or as opposed to flip that in Call of Cthulhu, you could make a character who's just a straight up scoundrel. He could be a button man for the mob, which a button man is basically just a hitman. It's their code word for hitman.
Yeah.
Or he could be a thief. He could be somebody just fresh out of prison because he held up a drugstore and shot the clerk in the face. You know what I'm saying? You could make a character just like that, who's got a similar backstory, as opposed to somebody who's got a more virtuous backstory. And hold on, somebody's at my front door. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
You're good. I did a quick Google search in that time just to familiarize myself with like the basic understanding of its history.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, like Call of Cthulhu and Vampire the Masquerade.
Vampire of the Masquerade anyway, because that's the one that I was less familiar with. Yeah, just that it was like who it was made by, when it was released.
Oh yeah, White Wolf
Publishing,
Entertainment.
Yeah, World of Darkness setting line. Okay,
well,
yeah.
And I'm gonna get to Vampire the Masquerade, but I kind of wanted to show how there's a difference in the gameplay there, because in Call of Cthulhu, it doesn't matter. You can be the hero or you could be the villain,
Right.
But either way, once you're called into action against, Cthulhu or just
you're going
cosmic,
against, yeah.
Thing, and that's the thing. It doesn't always have to be some ultimate creature like Cthulhu or any of the others in the mythos. Sometimes it's just something as simple as you tapped into a portal that opened up to another dimension, and now you're trying to, shut it, and it's pulling out all these things that just boggle the mind. Is break reality. Everybody's the hero in that sense, because in that sense, you really all are soldiers. It doesn't matter if you were once a righteous person. You could be a priest helping a priest helping a gangster, for instance. You know what I mean? Type of thing. And I don't want to pigeonhole anybody into particular things, because I know just because you're a priest doesn't mean you're ultimately the good guy, But you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
You could be
I see. I think I see what you're saying.
It doesn't. Yeah. But then everybody becomes a soldier. Basically, you're all working that same purpose. So that's where the gray area comes in that game. With alignment. You're not always going to see eye to eye and this and that. And then so there are some moral conundrums that can happen. With Vampire the Masquerade, however, the whole purpose of that game is the fact you become a vampire. You're now thrust into this world that you didn't know existed. This world of darkness, dare I say. And good or, whether you are a good person or a bad person, that is going to still reflect when you become this vampire. It's just going to determine what kind of vampire you become. Because and ultimately it doesn't matter, because the key point behind becoming a vampire in that whole thing is that vampires are all hungry. That entire time you're playing that game, you're fighting a hunger that is, they call it the beast. It's building up inside you, and you have to actually roll against it to keep it from breaking out and making you go into a frenzy and just, eating some poor kid's grandma in front of him.
Oh, I see. So that's why alignment isn't quite as important.
Because while you're a vampire, you may just be just the most timid, kindest person on the planet, because you can still stay that person,
Right, but the hunger.
But if you lose control for any reason, and moral conundrums again can come up, but alignment is kind of, these are gray areas,
Right, but it's more. I think I see what you're gonna get at, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, I pretty much got to it. I mean, it's one of those where.
Well, no, I mean in the future. I think I see where you're going with this a little bit.
Oh yeah, D&D is different in that sense. I mean, when it comes to tabletop RPGs, D&D is pretty much the granddaddy of them all. It's the godfather of TTRPGs. In a sense, I mean, they had tabletop battle games even before.
Well, really, it was the one that really popularized.
Yeah, I mean, they had tabletop battle games, but those were basically like just chess on crack. You know what I mean?
Right.
D&D is what introduced the role-playing aspect of it. We're not just setting up a battlefield and battling.
It's a story.
We're making something here.
Well, that's why they wanted to do it that way, because they would play those games, but they would play them so often that they decided, hey, let's start telling a story with this. And then they decided that they wanted to make their own rules.
Yeah.
And then they were like, hey, we might be onto something here.
I like to imagine, like with anything, when I like to imagine that possibly when I was a child, and I would do this a lot, I'd be playing with those little green army men, and I'd see one that just kind of popped in my eyes for whatever reason, maybe his head was turned slightly different than the others, or maybe he didn't get painted right, or something. There was always just something about that one little green army man, maybe a few of them. Maybe he was the only one of his kind, too. Maybe he just had a specific weapon, and he just came one in that group, you know? Something
Right.
that made a few of them pop. And you name them.
Right.
You know, and in those tabletop battle games, you know, they came unpainted. A lot of them did, even in those days, you know. And you could paint them, you know.
Well, and it was a hobby. It was a hobby to do so, to paint figurines. Like it still is,
and
you know.
I like to think to myself, and you know, don't quote me on this, but I like to think that maybe that's what made Gary Gygax think that in the first place, was the fact that maybe when he was painting all his soldiers to look uniform, you know, and he said, well, what if I paint this one different? And then he named it.
One.
And then he named it, and that became his favorite one, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you know, I'd like to go on an adventure with this one day. And there you go.
Or maybe it was one of his... Well, because Gary Gygax used to play those war games, you know what I mean? So maybe playing those war games, he had a couple pieces that were just his particular favorites, you know what I mean? He was just like, man, I just really like this piece, you know, for whatever reason. I just painted it this way. It's a little different, you know?
Like, what's the story?
And I've been playing with it so long, I think I want to write him a little story type thing.
He's like, why
are they fighting?
Yeah, like he's just wanting to expand upon it, and boom, there it happens. Because everybody does that to an extent, you know? Doesn't matter. Even if you're just...
Well, yeah, sure. Well, when you're a kid playing with toys.
The sweaty kid who's just there to grind, you know what I mean? You come up with a story, yeah. Yeah, I mean... In the video games, you know, when we played Dauntless together, I gave you my avatar's backstory. Dauntless isn't one of those real expanded upon lore building games, but it is fun. You do have a sense of individuality,
and
as such,
well, and it does have
human
some
nature
lore
to
building
do that.
to it. It's just not the same.
Yeah, it's in human nature to do that, though, and I feel like that's what sets Dungeons and Dragons apart, and that's why I'm really drawing from it when I say, you know, alignment, you know, and I know there's people who disagree with me out there, and again, I'm not saying that they're wrong, but alignment is important when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, because it's the one game where your alignment is part of what defines you as a player also. I mean, like I said, it does in a sense with Call of Cthulhu and Vampire the Masquerade, even, because your backstories are still huge and they can come back in to play a featured role in that. And even those games have their own sense of a pantheon, you know. With Vampire the Masquerade, the oldest vampires are kind of, and I may be butchering this lore a little bit because, again, I don't really play it, but it's to my understanding that their gods are really like the oldest vampires, really, like the first vampires. Sense. And they even have like an idea of the end of the world type scenario they call Gehenna, when the oldest vampires are going to come out of what they call torpor, which is just like a rest, you know, and they're gonna just end everything, you know.
Just eat the world, or what?
I have no idea.
They're gonna what? I'm sorry,
I have no idea. They're just gonna smite it. You know, they're just.
I see. It's
gonna be bad, whatever it is. But I mean, you also have in the World of Darkness, mythos, Werewolf the Apocalypse, where the werewolves worship a goddess named Gaia. They have 3 of them. Gaia's the one that is the life bringer, you know. And human industry is, you know, it's hurting the planet, and so Gaia is dying, and so the werewolves are preparing for the apocalypse, the death of Gaia, you know, and this and that. That's why they call it Werewolf the Apocalypse, because they're, you know, while the vampires are still living their life, just talking about Gehenna almost like it's a bedtime story type of thing, like it's Revelations, right? In the Bible. The werewolves believe the apocalypse is just Revelation, not Revelations, but the werewolves in Werewolf the Apocalypse, they believe it's just right around the corner. You see?
Right.
And so when you look at it like that, okay, yeah. Alignment, it's more of a role-playing mechanic in that sense. In D&D, it's also a role-playing mechanic, but it defines so much. And if you're gonna have a pantheon in your homebrew D&D, well, I just don't understand how you could get rid of alignment, because how do you tell the difference between, this is the god that my character wants to worship or not worship. Maybe he doesn't worship gods at all. Maybe he's not necessarily an atheist, or he could believe that there are no such thing as gods, depending on how you want to homebrew your campaign.
Right.
To use mine as an example, to use Art, the campaign, that...
Yeah, right. That you...
Everybody knows
for us.
That the gods exist.
Right.
It's just your choice, not whether or not you want to worship them or not.
You worship them.
And one of the things that I changed personally was the idea in D&D. They say, in order for the god to exist, he has to have worshipers.
Right.
He can't just without worshipers, he's gonna die, basically. The astral plane in your basic D&D setting is littered with the bodies of dead gods who lost worshipers.
Well, right, and that's something that kind of Android asked about in game. He was like, is it like that? Is it like that? Do you lose your power when people don't worship you, or what?
And I basically had Coralon explain it to him as in, well, no, we're still gods regardless. We've earned that right. Because they're not. The thing is that one of the things I changed is that they're just really powerful beings who became so powerful that they
broke the threshold.
Yeah, they
like Talos.
Yeah, exactly. Like from Elder Scrolls, Talos.
Yeah. Tiberius Septim.
So I try to keep it more to real life in that sense, where alignment is important because you do have gray areas in life. Not everything is morally subjective.
Sure. Well, right. I would argue that there are some things that are fundamentally right and wrong. And when we were talking about doing this, we talked about that a little bit, and I'm not going to go off on that rant like I did before, but I think if you don't agree that some acts are fundamentally wrong, then perhaps you might need some restructuring of ideas. That might be bold to say, but I don't care. It's my podcast. I don't really give a shit. You know what I mean? Don't like it, walk out. We still have your fucking money. You know what I mean?
But to be honest, that's true though, and that's why...
That's true though, you know what I mean? Well, and this might be something that you're going to touch upon a little bit, you know what I mean? But I'm going to make a quick point about it, I think part of what's important about the alignment system is that a fundamental use of D&D is that it allows you to explore areas of yourself that you might not be able to explore otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So,
because you kind of you put a little bit of...
I think you know exactly what I mean. You know what I mean? Exactly. There's a little bit of you in every character. So whether it's exaggerated or not, and that's important, that makes the alignment system important, because it judges whether or not you're doing something wrong, whether or not you're doing something evil, or whether or not you're acting out of your own subjective sense of justice. That's the difference between lawful and chaotic, you know what I mean? You can be chaotic good, it means you're not an evil person. You don't kill people just to kill people, but you also don't live by other people's rules. You'll steal if it benefits you.
You're basically the
what I mean?
Type of thing. You'll do what you have to make sure that it gets that a good job done.
And it shows you personality, you know what I mean? You can judge a little bit about this character's personality based on their alignment,
Yeah. It's almost like if you compare the two with like Vampire the Masquerade and D&D, there really is only like a few alignments in Vampire the Masquerade. You've got lawful evil, got chaotic evil, and then you've pretty much just got neutral good.
Neutral.
Yeah, like neutral good or neutral, because if somebody loses their crap, they're trying to do the right thing, but they lose their crap and eat said kid, aforementioned child's grandmother, then they've got that subplot now where they've got to learn how to deal with that, But if you're chaotic evil, you don't care. Or if you're the lawful evil, if you're the lawful evil, you're able to talk yourself into just thinking, you still don't care. It's just a little easier. And if you're neutral evil, well, the ends or if you're neutral, the ends justify the means.
Sure.
In D&D, however, if you have a similar situation, because there are vampires in D&D, depending on your alignment, that's going to break your whole system. You're not going to have a lawful good person become a vampire willingly anyways. And if they do become one accidentally, that's a whole subplot for an adventure altogether on how they're going to get rid of this disease. They're either going to figure out how to get rid of it, and if there is no way to get rid of it, they're going to die trying to get rid of it. It's a whole John dies at the end scenario here.
Right.
So, alignment not only helps you discern how to create your pantheon and how your god should act and how your world is created, but it also, helps to create the story in that sense. Because you're dealing with things a little differently. You can have a lawful evil character travel with a primarily good party.
Right.
Just, because the ends justify the means. Then you got a Call of Cthulhu type of situation there. Whatever villain is actually the big bad guy is so uberly bad that even the lawful evil character is like, nah, man. Nah, that's, I'm right here. I'll punch a little kid in the head, if I have to. I'll kick a baby across the street, but this is a dude who's walking around trying to eat a whole orphanage. You know what I mean?
Oh,
this is no good, and maybe if you're lawful evil too, and you're like, and I own the orphanage, that's one of my sources of income, he's hurting me in the pocket, so and
this greedy douche.
So it allows you to it makes for character building, and so if you don't have alignment, then do you both the lawful evil character and the we'll say neutral good character, who's had to convince the lawful good character that the ends justify the means, let's let this guy in the group, but does the lawful evil character and the primarily good characters all worship Palor then, because Palor is the sun, he's the light, he's the justice. You know what I'm saying? He's
Sure.
the holy one. You know what I mean? He's the primarily he went in a lot of campaigns. When people think of like the ultimate good god in D&D, they think of Palor for that instance. You know,
Palor, right?
Do they all worship him? And if they're like, well, no, then why not? I mean, if there's no alignment,
because Cuthbert's the one that's gonna pop you in the
yeah,
mouth.
Palor will be the, you know, yeah. It also brings attitude to the gods in that sense.
Sure.
You know, if Obad High, for instance, in our campaign, because we have Otis, you know, our halfling cleric who worships Obad High, I made Obad High the lover of life. You know, he's the hippie type of dude. You know, he loves life. He, you know, loves nature. You know, he can dig it, and he respects all that. You know, what
Right.
Obad High is the lover of life, and then Nerl is the bringer of death. You know, he loves death. You know, he doesn't necessarily love destruction. He just loves death in all its natural form. You know,
Right.
he likes somebody. He's not trying to like decimate an entire village so he can see all death necessarily, but he doesn't mind it when it happens. He appreciates that
because it's natural
just as much. Yeah, he appreciates that. He appreciates a bomb going off in a town just as much as he appreciates, and the death that brings, just as much as he appreciates, you know, somebody going in their sleep type of thing, you know?
Well, because to him it's no different than a lion eating a gazelle.
Exactly.
It's just nature.
It's death, yeah.
It's just nature to die.
But how do you know the difference between the two? You know, if you don't have alignment, then Otis could worship either, you know, because exactly, like he could worship either in that sense, except,
yeah, you're right.
Except, you know, the primary worshipers, you know, who with alignment, you get to divide the difference in the worshipers and who's going to side with Nerl in that sense, as opposed to who's going to side with Obad High. Because of alignment. Alignment gives you a lot of base to work with. You know, it's the cornerstone, if you will, of all character building. My character's attitude should be based upon his alignment. And if you just make it a gray area, then you've basically just got the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde syndrome. In that sense, I want to be neutral. I think everything should just be neutral because I want to run around and cause a bunch of mischief, because in real life I can't do that.
Well, and that kind of, I think that also kind of opens the door for people to make Mary Sue characters, right? At least in the sense of a role-playing aspect rather than being just totally overpowered. But you notice that a trait of like a Mary Sue in their stories is that they can be a dick to anybody, but everybody will just treat it like it's like whatever, you know, oh, that's just so, and that, you know, that's just Mary Sue, you know what I mean? They'll still love her in the end, even though she's a bit of a twat, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, nah, you know, you don't shit gold.
No,
know?
And
yeah, you know, that's what you get when you take out alignment. It's somebody that's like, well, I can act this way because it's a moral gray area. My character's having a bad day, you know? It's like, just piss off, you know? Like, honestly.
Well, and it's boring, too. I mean,
sure.
A real neutral character.
And
real neutral.
I might be being a little bit aggressive. I'll acknowledge that, right? I'm sure people have good reasons for why they want they want to get rid of alignment. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean they do, but I mean it's kind of for that same sense where
I just disagree.
I've heard the argument because nothing is really true. Morals are just subjective. Blah blah blah. You don't know why this person is doing this and what made them this way. Well, granted,
Well, so
that's
what? Does that give
true.
them the right to treat somebody the same way that they themselves were treated?
Exactly. Like
You know what I mean?
you have to follow the law of human nature in the sense where in the end it doesn't matter. You could have grown up with really good parents. You could be one of those kids who grew up with really good parents who care, who try to give you everything that they can. And if they're really good parents, sometimes they don't give you everything, teach you that lesson that because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly.
But I mean, like, for that instance, and then you grow up though, and you still turn out to be, just a bag of dump. And the reason for that is because there comes a time in life where everybody has to make their own decisions. Everybody has to make that choice, and if you just make everything a subjective in that sense, then you really are playing a fantasy. Then, my friend, I mean, like honestly. That's just a fantasy scenario, Oh, well, you don't know what made him that way. Well, granted, I don't know what made him that way. And some characters, you think about Eli Cunning, the character in our campaign right now, when it was just my two baby boys, Tyrone and Android. They were the only people in the campaign when we first started playing, You guys met him pretty early on, You guys got to meet him pretty early on.
Yeah.
And
pretty much right out the gate. When was it the first time that we got to Cudgel City, maybe, with Timothy?
It was, no.
Or
Timothy
was it
never made it to Cudgel City. You guys were on your way to Cudgel City, and you met him, like...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you met him in a carriage. He was taking you to Cudgel City. And he gave you guys that line of questioning because he is an Inquisitor. He is St. Cuthbert's hand of justice on Loxos, the planet which we play on. On Loxos, he is St. Cuthbert's hand of justice. He's, basically, he's the living embodiment of Wonder Woman's lasso. He's the living lasso. His job is to, discern, the difference between crap and Shinola, And even then, you guys, I mean, like, there was something kind of nerve-wracking about him. Even though he is lawful good, he is a good guy, There was something really nerve-wracking about him because he was that kind of good guy, though, who, if he even sensed that you were lying or that you were withholding or, if he thought there was anything, like, absolutely, like, I don't want to say morally corrupt because he's not just walking through the streets killing, and
if we were trying to withhold anything
he's not just walking
there.
around axing pimps for slapping their women down. You know what I mean? But like, more of on a grander scale. He's if he thought you were working for the big fish, if you guys were actually big fish and not just minnows or minnows working for the big fish and you're trying to hide it, if you're trying to infiltrate that which is
not
good,
necessarily a shark, but
exactly, if you're trying to infiltrate that which is good, that which is he is supposed to protect, to piss in the pond, I guess, you know what I mean? He lets you know right off the gate he was going to kill you,
Right.
Like he he's judge, jury, and executioner. He's just a fascist, in that sense,
Right.
But he's doing it because he thinks what he's doing is for the greater good,
Justified.
And that, in a sense, doesn't necessarily make him the good guy, but you have those alignments to determine that in that sense. Because you could say, well, that makes it the gray area, but it doesn't. Not really.
It doesn't necessarily because, well, it might have at the time, giving our frame of reference, you know what I mean? But now that we're a little bit later on in our particular campaign, we can see that even then, he had a lead, you know what I mean? And if he thought we were working with his current enemy, you know, and not just kind of there by happenstance, then why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he kill us?
Being infiltrators.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
exactly. He thought we were moles. It's not like, you know, you see what I'm saying? It's not like he would have been unjustified to some degree. And you can argue all day, you know, well, who's really justified to take a life? Shut up.
yeah. Like, come on now. Sometimes the ends just justify
Exactly.
the means,
It's
man.
not the
I mean,
point.
like,
It's just that you're missing the point. It's not a it's a mechanic of the game for a reason. You know what I mean? Because it influences your decision making. You know what I mean? And it encourages
well, and you could say because he's
introspective
of his
thought.
alignment, and you could say because of his alignment, even though okay, this may be a gray area, but because of his alignment, you know that if crap hits the fan and evil is overtaking, you know he's somebody you can depend upon to stand on the side of
Exactly.
right. And because he's so powerful, that's a bad person to have on your side. You know?
Right.
What makes it interesting, how you can, you know, how you can scale through alignment though and do it on a sliding scale and make alignment interesting instead of just getting rid of it and making it all subjective is the current situation you're in with him now. In that
Well,
sense,
and that's
where,
how gray area
you know,
plays into
doing
it.
what he's done now. Yeah, doing what he's done now to try for the greater good. You know, he's made himself the bad guy.
Exactly.
He still believes he's the good guy. He believes
believes
what
he's
he's
the
done
good
is
guy.
right. Yeah, he believes what he's done is right wholeheartedly. What he's done is right, but he's made himself the bad guy. But that's what makes alignment so interesting. And if you take it out of the game, then I mean, you know, and then you've got
Then you're
and
taking
who's the god
that
he
out of the
worships?
game.
And what can blow your mind about the whole thing
Saint
is who's the
Cuthbert.
god he
Exactly.
worships? Saint Cuthbert, the god of retribution. So you get
Exactly.
retribution by definition alone is you get what's coming to you. You know, not all retributions.
Exactly.
Some retribution is good. You do enough good, and your retribution may be, you know, oh, you know, I worked hard. I did what I had to do for my family. I tried my hardest, and blah blah blah. And now we live in a nice house and we're comfortable, and blah blah blah. That's good retribution. Bad retribution could be, you know, I was too lazy to go out and get a real job, so I robbed people for what they worked hard for, and blah blah blah. And your retribution could be prison. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Retribution in that sense. So, who's his god? Saint Cuthbert, the god of retribution.
The god of retribution.
So,
exactly.
I mean,
and he casts his own subjective sense of retribution. And that's where the gray area plays into the alignment. You know what I mean? Because even though he thinks he's doing something good because he started off on that side, he thinks he's acting out of good, he's doing evil. He's committing evil acts.
He's making things worse.
You know
what
I mean?
Making things
exactly.
Worse. He's, you know, instead of trusting people the way he should have, he turned around and just acted, you know, which, I mean, some might argue, well, I mean, that was his job, you know, he is judge, jury, and executioner. He made a judgment, he followed through with it, but was his judgment good? And, you know, I mean, it's like Al Pacino said in The Devil's Advocate, vanity is still my favorite sin. You know, you can almost become so pious in yourself, you lose the plot. And that, I mean, and his God being who his God is, you know, the God of retribution. There is a retribution that must be had. And not even Eli Cunning can deny that, correct? So,
correct.
It makes it so much more interesting when you're creating these pantheons with these gods and you're giving them alignments and you're really thinking it through so you can give them to your people and say to your characters and say, okay, you know, now I'm going to keep this in mind. You know, I mean, you don't have to start off neutral and stay neutral the whole game. you could be neutral and use it as a plot device to go one way or the other eventually, you know, or you could just
Right.
stay a plank of wood. I mean, honestly, I mean, there's some cool neutral. Well, there's some
Right.
cool
Well.
neutral characters.
Well, exactly. That
You
doesn't.
know, and neutral is
Exactly.
also chaotic neutral. There's lawful neutral. I mean, you know, you're not really a plank of wood if you're playing a neutral character. I mean, there are interesting
Not
neutral,
necessarily.
you know, just in, yeah, I mean, look at Kratos. I would say he was chaotic neutral all through, you know, the original first 3 games, you know,
Right.
up until the end of the third one. And then I would say that dude became chaotic good, you know?
Right.
I mean, and there you have it. It's not a gray area. It, it's not subjective. You know, you have to make a decision, and you have to tell yourself, you know, is this right or wrong? Because there is such a thing, you know. And if you get rid of alignments, then you're not living by those elements. You're just waiting to make those decisions. And like you said earlier, then you're a Mary Sue. Doesn't matter what I'm gonna do, I'm always gonna make
Right.
the right decision, you know. And it's like, no, that's
Not
not.
necessarily.
No,
Well,
because
exactly. Well, and I think the larger point to me is that, you know, it influences your character arc. You know what I mean? Like you said with Kratos, you know what I mean? That story is the story of how Kratos went from chaotic neutral. Well, really, he got pretty evil there for a second, you know? But when you pick up the story for chaotic neutral, you know what I mean? And over the course of the games, like you said, he becomes chaotic good. It's the story of how he goes from chaotic neutral to chaotic good, you know? And that's the important element. That's what makes it important, is the difference in the alignments, you know? That's how his character developed over time. That's how you come to understand their story and them as a character. How are they changing over time? People don't stay static over time. You know what I mean? People change.
exactly
There's no reason
growth.
to not reflect that in your character.
You,
It's
you never
growth.
really stop growing as a person. I mean, I think the trap is in adulthood is you get set in your ways. But
Well,
really,
yeah.
honestly, you really never stop growing as a person. Never do. You just either uh you can become bitter over time, or you can become kinder. You know, maybe you started off
Well, a lot of
angry
times
and
people
become
that are too
kind.
set in their ways are the people that are unhappy and the people that are bitter, like you said, because they're unwilling to,
Or,
typically anyway, they're typically unwilling to reflect on themselves, to be introspective, to consider perhaps I'm wrong about something.
yes, exactly. It is a very interesting way to grow as a character. And you can do this also, and I feel like I'm alienating the other 2 games I mentioned, but you can do this in Vampire the Masquerade as well. You can do this in Call of Cthulhu as well. It's
Well,
just,
like with any tabletop game, to some degree, the rules are guidelines.
yeah,
You know what I
you're
mean?
just not as pigeonholed into it
Right. It's just
in
not as
in D
strong of an
in
element.
D and D, because no matter
Or,
what you do in
yeah,
Vampire the
I guess, yeah.
Masquerade, you're still, and
Right.
like no matter what you do
Well,
in
it's the nature of a
Yeah,
vampire.
no matter what you do in Call of Cthulhu, regardless whether you agree, disagree, you become a better person, you become a worse person, whatever, you know, you still have to stop this world-ending dilemma, or figure out what is causing this situation, this, you know, this problem, for instance. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
but in D&D, however, you know, you can use it to define the entire story. You know, you can use it to make
Exactly.
the ultimate conclusions of things, and it's just, it's not the only tools of the game that you can use, of course, you know, in any tabletop RPG, but I find them to be two of the most important. First of all, figuring out if your world even has gods, and then if it does have gods, then, you know, deciding what alignments these gods favor, you know, and it
Right.
helps grow as a player, and you know, some people would argue, well, you know, the warlock class, because I play 3.5, we don't play 5th edition, so I know there's been a lot of changes, but I mean in 3.5, more or less, uh warlocks, and I'm pretty sure they still do this in 5th edition, a warlock's whole purpose is, and I know that they do this for a fact, but a warlock's purpose is they're kind of like a paladin. I've heard it put, warlock is like a paladin, but instead of having a boss, they have a sugar daddy. You see what I'm saying?
Nice. I know exactly what you mean.
And so, and it makes sense. Well, what's the difference then? You know, because a paladin serves a god, a warlock serves a powerful outsider. So what's the difference there?
Rules.
Yeah, well, I mean, the rules per se, but I mean, without it being too meta,
okay.
like let's say you have an NPC child who's learning religion in your campaign, and he meets a paladin character and a warlock character, and they both explain to him who they are and what they're about, and he says, "Well, what's the difference?" You know, how would they explain that?
I'm not sure if I can chalk it up to any one thing other than just being like alignment. You know what I mean? But that's a meta way to put it, you know, alignment. It's the difference between like I worship this person because of their ideals, and I worship this person because they give me stuff. They give me power. You know what I mean? They give me power, so yeah, I'll do what they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's actually one of the best ways of explaining it. The idea of one is based upon ideals and the other is based upon gifts.
Sure. Yeah.
Because not every outsider is evil, you know, and not every god is good, you know. So then again, alignment comes to play in, like you said, you know, a warlock who worships a good outsider, that outsider is giving him the tools to deliver righteous judgment. You know, while the paladin, the evil paladin, who they call them oath breakers, I think in 5th edition, but back in 3.5 era they called them blackguards, and it was a prestige class that you could take, and you could get it really quickly if you were going to make an evil paladin by simply just you know, turning your back on the paladin side of it, but still being a paladin, but worshiping an evil god. Then you got that prestige class almost instantly, and you still leveled up like you were a paladin, only you were getting like blackguard stuff now. Like instead of detect evil, you can now detect good. See what I'm saying? Instead of being able to summon like a familiar mount, you could summon fiends. You know, things like that.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
It does. It falls in with alignment. The idea behind ideals and gifts, and also the way things are worshipped. You know, gods have churches, temples. You know what I mean? They have what I would like to call, gods have organized religion, right? Outsiders have cults. You see what I mean?
Okay.
Outsiders have cults.
I think I get
they have both sides have worshippers. Basically, both sides of that spectrum have worshippers. The difference is one is organized. It gets tax breaks, if you will. You know what I mean? And the other side doesn't. The other side is not recognized as official, which is why one of the reasons why in in our campaign, I've erased the idea behind needing worshipers of God, because I mean every outsider should be a god in their own right, because they have cults, and if you have enough cults, you have enough worshipers. If you have enough worshipers, you're a god. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I mean, there's varying differences in that. I don't. The word cult has a very negative connotation to it. We think of it as
It
drinking
does.
the Kool-Aid, but it's really not. I mean, you could call D&D players a cult. They come together in an organization, they play and have fun, and you know what I mean? It's a form of worship.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not always a negative thing, you know. David Koresh, Jim Jones. The word cult, it's a bad rap, but I mean, honestly,
Ooh. Bit of a hiccup there.
that's okay. That's okay. That's honestly, in my
that's
opinion,
good.
the difference, though. You
Yeah.
could boil it down, and I'm sure there's people out there who have thought about it to a different aspect and have good points as the differences there too, also.
Sure.
But these are like
Well, and
you
if you
said with
do,
like,
feel free to drop it in the comments, right? Whatever.
yeah, like, share, and subscribe. Um, but no,
Exactly.
really though, like, I mean, you hit me with something just a minute ago. Like, it's something I hadn't even thought about when you said, the difference between gifts and ideals. I hadn't even thought about that. But I
Right.
mean, that's another good one. That's just another good example of the difference between the two. But you need alignments to make those differentiations. You really do. You can't just say everything is a gray area. You can slide scale things on a gray area, but that's not subjective. That's not making everything subjective and saying, "Oh, well, we should feel bad." I mean, you could just for on a completely role playing element. You could, as a group, discover a villain's backstory and take him out and feel a little bit bad about doing it, just in the sense where it was like, that's, his story's rough. You know what I mean? Yeah, but there are characters.
But he's still evil.
But he's still evil, and we still can't let this happen. So he's got to go, and I'm not going to sit there and be like, I'm not going to sit there and let myself get hung up on his past. I'm not going to be neutral like that. Good is good, bad is bad, and some things are just a kind of an in-between, and you tell yourself, okay, well, let's explore this gray area for.
Right, well, and the point of alignment is that if you want to be neutral, then be neutral. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to be that way, then if you want to sympathize and be like, you know what, fine, you're justified, that's neutral. You know what I mean? Like you said, if you want to be neutral, exactly, that's why you have the alignments. That's what sets the differences. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but don't get yourself in that rut where you just made a neutral character that could do bad things, but still travel with a good party. Everybody else in the party's good.
Right, what purpose do you, what do you stand to gain from that,
Like, this is one of the reasons, this is one of the arguments that I've heard of erasing alignment, is to take care of that problem, because that's happening more and more in 5th edition, more than it ever did in, like, the previous editions, really, that I've seen. Back in 3.5 days, when I started playing, I was 14, and we understood what to be neutral really meant in that sense.
Right. Well,
now you got a lot of players who are like, well, they're all good, but I'm going to be neutral because I want to be not. And it allows me to run around and do, like, really crap pill things and say, well, it's what my character would do. And it's like, don't make a character like that, man,
Right.
Give yourself some moral. You know,
exactly.
if you're gonna play D&D,
well, I think playing a neutral character, because for me, excuse me, I think for me, because my character started off neutral, you know, I think for me it was that I didn't know quite what I wanted to do, you know, so that's another reason why I picked Bard, other than the fact that it's just kind of part of my personality. I really enjoy music, but bards are known to be a little bit in the gray area with their morals, you know what I mean? If you see what I'm saying? So that's part of what influenced that idea. And I did explore a little bit of that in the beginning until I decided, you know what? You know? Nah. You know what? I don't think I'm actually going to sacrifice this elf woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, actually, you know, something about that doesn't sit right with me. And something about it, you know, something about it didn't sit right with me as a person. I was like, do I really want to explore that? You know, like with this character, with my first D&D character, is that really what I'm going to do? Like, do I want to be evil this campaign? You know, because I'm going to have to commit to that, and that might be hard on my psyche. You know what I mean?
Do you really want to be a degenerate, you know?
Exactly. Do I really want... Well, because doing that level, you know, I'm going to sacrifice an elf woman, because that's what I was going to do. I was definitely going to do that. And I was like, man, that's pretty evil. You know? That's just straight out the gate evil. You know, and Android had to work his way up to being just, like, straight up good, you know? And I was like, that's just a straight up evil thing to do. That one act alone will hard change my alignment, you know? And that's one of those things where it's like, if I'm going to do that, I might have to commit to this a little bit for a while at least. And I don't think I want to do that, you know? But the fact that it crossed his mind, you know, that he considered doing it and then was just kind of like, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna do that, kind of is character growth, you know what I mean?
Well, he was being offered some pretty interesting
Power
stuff. Yeah, he was being offered, and you know, that's not we all like to believe that, and there are some people in this world. I'm not going to say that all people are just, you know, it really weirds me out when you have that expression. It's like saying once something, always a something, you know, like once a cheater,
Sure.
always a cheater, once a villain, always a villain type of thing, you know?
Yeah,
It's
why?
like, okay,
why
well,
is it, what makes you think that? You know what I
we
mean?
can believe that somebody who is bad can never find a way to become good, right? But
Right.
there is always that expression about how a good man can be corrupted. People can be corrupted, blah, blah, blah.
Right, you either
We can believe
die
that,
a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right?
exactly. And so it's really weird to me how we can believe that good can become evil, but evil can't become good. Like, and I don't want to say like evil,
I think
like
that's
doing
one of the
evil
greatest
can
tricks of
become
life.
good. Yeah, doing evil can become a good thing. I mean, like,
No,
person
I know
who
what you mean.
messed up can know that they messed up and fix themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
And try to live it down. You know, and I know that there's varying degrees of evil and whatever. You know what I'm saying? But who knows what your penance, if you will, you may have to pay for that.
exactly.
Your penance
Well,
may be something.
and the
maybe
way
something,
he described it to Android is partially what made him be like, you know what? Actually, I don't know. If I accept this, I don't know what the real price I'm going to pay is. I don't think I want that.
yeah,
I
I mean,
like that.
honestly, like, he was. It's in our nature that, you know. So I like to believe. Like I said, there are some people who just based upon their personality would have been given that offer and just nope, right the crap out of it. Would have been like, nope, that is not that. You know what I'm saying? Like, nope, there's no way I would do that. You know. But
Right.
I like to. But there is people in this world who, who try to be good. But when faced with something like that, there is temptation there.
Well, yeah.
It's like, oh
sure.
man, that's really grimy, but dang, this could fix a lot of my problems.
I
type
could
of
be
thing.
powerful.
Mm-hmm. And so,
And in the realm of
draw
D&D,
to
that
it.
could become, I could find a way to not die.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, there is a draw to it, And again, I'm just saying, with alignments, you get to explore all of that,
Exactly.
I mean, if everything is just a gray area and everything is just subjected, then you're gonna just play your character and say, nope, you still may be the kind of person who just nopes right out of that. You know what I'm saying? Nope, still not gonna do it. And you've been good that entire time. Then you go outside and somebody has a disagreement with you and you freaking lash out at them like now you're the villain. So you're just bouncing back and forth because we're all just yin and yang. Is that it, or is it unfair to say that some people just tend to? It's like that story of the Native American boy who asked his grandfather. He said, "Grandfather, sometimes it feels like I have two wolves living inside me. One wants to exist in peace and harmony, and the other seeks nothing but rage and seeks to devour." He said, "Which one do I go with?" And his grandfather looks at him and said, "The one you feed the most."
Exactly.
You have to feed one. You can't just sit on the fence the whole time. And to get rid of alignment, to fix the neutral problem of everybody just wanting to be naughty sometimes, that's just the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing, man. Pick a side.
Exactly.
Be a good person, be a good character, be a bad character. I'm not saying be a good person or be a bad person. I'm not particularly a bad person, but I've made evil characters before.
Right. Sure.
I've had in my 14 years of making characters, I've got 2 legendary evil characters. I mean, them guys were legendary, and they did some pretty bad things, and in some of those aspects, I did it as well. It's what my character would do. I did think to myself, this is what my character would do. This isn't.
Well, exactly. But the point, the reason why you can is because that really is what your character would do. He follows a consistent pattern of behavior. You know what I mean? It's not like Boricon when he's given somebody a nice... I don't even know how to word it, really. You know what I mean? He's just shit-talking somebody, just kind of being evil about it, talking about how he walks the walk, right? He is evil. You know what I mean? If he tells you that he's gonna... I really don't want to put it this way, but bang your eye socket, then he's gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it is. He's an evil character, That's an evil thing to say that you're gonna do to somebody. He would do it.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's evil.
We're gonna go back to that kid and his grandma, only now instead of slapping his grandma in front of him or anything, he's telling that little boy before he does it, he's like, "I'm gonna kill your grandma and rape your corpse in front of you." That's
right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's
like,
not, and then he does it. He does it.
It's
It's not like after that he turns around and goes and helps an orphanage. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, unless he's trying to help that one villain make profits off of that, because he's got a cut in that.
Well, then he's not helping the orphanage.
And that's how you determine it. I mean, it works within his alignment. If it's a gray area, then basically, I'm just, like you said, I'm just married suing it. I'm always just going to make the right decision. You can't 100% put yourself 100% within your character. I mean, because
exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying.
That,
like,
it's just going to be it's just going to be boring. I mean,
Exactly. Well, and
we're not all the Dos Equis guy, you know. We're not all
it's
the most
exploring
interesting man
aspects
on
of
the planet.
yourself, exaggerated though. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
taking elements of yourself that you went, because let's be real, everybody has evil within them. You know what I mean? This is a healthy way of exploring your evil without having to be evil. You see what I'm saying? You're not necessarily hurting anybody, you know? You're just getting to experience without what it's like to be evil without the commitment, I guess. You know
But
what I mean?
if you're the GM without alignment, and that's interesting that you should bring it up like that, because if you're the GM and you have no alignment, then how do you punish your characters? You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Or
fair
if
enough.
you have alignments in your mind, and you know, as evil as those characters are, and they're your party or whatever, you know, you have to give them real world consequences, and you can do it without alignment, you know. But what gives them the right then? If there's no such thing as alignment, you know, if you're just saying, well, there's no alignment, but there's good and evil, then it's like, yeah, but that there's varying aspects of it. You know, you have to give yourself some kind of structure in this game, in this particular game. You know,
Right.
use it as your stepping stones. You know, maybe you don't make your players.
Well, that's why it's there, because it's a guideline. You know, the books themselves are guidelines. It doesn't necessarily need to be taken out. You know, like, if you don't like alignment, then run your own campaign or find somebody that doesn't do alignment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're guidelines. They're not laws. They're not rules.
At least,
You know?
at least, if you're taking out alignment in your game, you know, at the very least, the GM himself should still put the alignments in his mind. Hey, what did they just do there? Is that chaotic
I
good,
agree.
chaotic evil, this and that, you know?
Right. Just because it helps
And
him.
this is how I punish them, you know? Don't let them all just be neutral, you know? Don't let everything just be neutral. Yeah,
Right. Let them think that they're
I've got
neutral.
NPCs in there. Yeah, I've got NPCs in there that sometimes I use just to slap some of you guys back into reality with because of their alignment, you know?
Right.
When Uquill in our group killed Shiva in our group for that, you know, I thought that was a bit excessive for that, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it was.
He didn't mean to do it,
He didn't mean to kill him.
but he did it, and it's like, okay, that's Uquill just being a jerk right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's consistent with his character, you know, but he's just being a jerk.
Well, it was consistent of his character to hit him.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to mollywop that dude's soul out of his body.
Yeah, and you didn't have to hit him with the sword either. You could have just punched him, and that would have been a lot more understandable. But because you up and hit him with your sword and killed him, you know, you are traveling with somebody right now who would look at that and be like, "What is wrong with you?" And that's exactly what he did. You know what I mean?
He's like, "What's your problem?"
Yeah, got right up in Uquill's face and was like, "There's something wrong with you." I mean, they had that, you know, they had that deal, and it was funny. Like, I as the DM was not mad.
Something disconnected in your head there, bud.
Like, I wasn't mad as the DM. Like, there are some DMs who would get mad about that.
Get
Those
mad,
are supposed
yeah.
to be a team and love each other, and it's like, that's not always real life, though, bud.
Nah, you're allowed to play
Honestly,
as much D&D as you like.
And honestly, like, I couldn't be mad personally, just exactly.
Cause that's funny.
And really, honestly, what made Shiva think that was a good idea, anyways? Like, walking up with
Well, man, no kidding.
like, I mean, that he was just being a troll there too. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that's the problem. Like, when, like I said, and I'm going to go on the record saying this right now. The problems that D&D is facing right now, and some of the growth it's facing right now, are related to the same thing, and that is 5th edition. While 5th edition is, and I got nothing against 5th edition players, I got nothing against 5th edition. 4th edition should really be 5th edition. erase fourth edition from the history books.
Existence, just call fifth.
Yeah, call it a mulligan and call fourth edition, fifth edition, fourth edition, and
I'm not sure. I like that. That sounds a little bit too much like 1984 to me, bud.
Yeah, let's rewrite the history books. Let's all be fascists. But I'm serious though. Like,
no, I totally know what you mean.
Let's think about this though. Let's really think about this. 'Cause, okay, here are the pros, right? Because we've been talking about a lot of these cons, anyways.
Sure.
Tied into fifth edition, but fifth edition. See, I'm already doing it. Fifth edition. It's become real streamlined. I mean, like, because I've been looking at these fifth edition books here lately, and I've been reading some of the rules and things like that, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like.
Well, it's totally streamlined.
I'm like, oh my goodness. My daughter, when she turned 7, she could run a campaign. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Or she could. I don't want to take
away
from any. Yeah, maybe. I don't want to. Well, no, I don't want to take away from any fifth edition EMs here. What I mean by running a campaign is
I'm
she
playing.
Could.
I'm just kidding.
Understand the rules enough to mediate. You know what I mean? Could she weave a tale rich and vibrant, like somebody who's been doing it for years on it? Probably not. She might come up with like a really cute little story that you walk away feeling good about, where you found like a family of wolves inside a cave and helped the mother because her foot was caught in a trap or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
sure,
it might be something a little bit more. It might be something a little bit more. My Little Pony, as opposed to Game of Thrones.
It's just streamlined enough to where even kids can get the basic concept of the rules
and run and possibly run a game and get their storytelling chops.
Sure. Well, and I think that's a pro. I think that's a big pro because it makes it friendly to everybody, and that's something that 5th edition has really done. For D&D, it's open. It's allowed everybody to get their foot in the door, because what's wrong? You could criticize 3.5 and be like, "Man, look at this damn spreadsheet." You know what I mean? Look at this list of skills. This is all math.
Tumble?
You know what I mean?
You mean tumble? You mean I gotta roll something to tumble? I can't just roll one thing?
I can't just roll an athletic. Yeah, I can't just roll an athletic and jump and swim and fly.
It's like, no, because what if you're a dwarf, man?
No, let me ask you. Can Michael Phelps tumble?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Like a crazy
but he can swim like it's nobody's business.
But I'm pretty sure that dude's dad banged the dolphin. Yeah, I mean, like, let's be fair. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I appreciate about it in comparison.
You may be a dwarf who's good at tumbling and doing a few athletic things, but he's not going to be able to swim as well.
Right. Some people are good at riding horses, but not good at swimming.
Exactly.
Look at John Marston in Red Dead Redemption 1. That dude steps foot in water and he's instantly dead. But he can ride a horse like it's nobody's business.
No more. You're done.
You're done. He touches that water and he's dead.
Sonic the Hedgehog can run and jump, but he falls in water, he's out.
He's done.
Actually, that's not true. There's the water level with the bubbles.
Well, he can go under there, but for like 2 seconds.
And that
before he's like, okay, get me out of here. Which is interesting to me because
even in that water level, he don't swim. He sinks like a rock.
He can't swim for shit. For shit. And it's like you'd think you'd have more lung capacity if you can run that fast for one.
Why can't this dude hold his breath?
And if he can run fast enough to literally put himself run across the surface of water.
He's got the cardio of a freaking god.
Why can't he just doggy paddle?
Yeah, he's got the freaking.
Bro can't even doggy paddle.
And that's like,
But yeah.
yeah. So I mean, let's be fair. But it's nice the fact that they've made it easily understandable in that
Well,
sense.
okay, so
You know,
here's the thing, right? I am not going to sugarcoat my feelings about 5th edition. I really do appreciate what it's done for the industry, but I think it's Mary Sue Simulator. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're good at this one broad category of skills and you can do fucking anything in that skill set. You're intelligent, you've got high in your knowledge skills, whatever. Yeah, you know all about geography and religion. You know, it's I don't know. I don't appreciate 5th edition to that degree. You know, I appreciate that it allows everybody to get their foot in the door and that it's done so much to make people aware of it, you know? And I'm not necessarily trying to dog on people that play 5th edition, you know? If that's your jam, that's your jam, bro. Don't let me take that away from you. I just personally believe that fuck that, you know? Like, that's not how reality is. Just because you can run fast and jump high doesn't necessarily mean that you can swim. You know, just because you can swim really good doesn't mean that you can run fast or tumble, you know? It's more on the money to me to have a spreadsheet that specifies what you can and can't do, because let me ask you, man, can you climb a rock wall? Like, not necessarily, you know, like, can you scale a 90-degree rock wall? You know, not like the ones that they have in, like, obstacle courses. No, I mean the side of a mountain. You know what I mean? If it's a 90-degree vertical, you know, climb, could you do it? Because I probably couldn't. I haven't invested enough skills in my personal climb skill, you know?
well, and it does that. I mean, in that sense, that's the thing that like 3.5 brought to the table so well. You know,
exactly. That's why 3.5 is my jam, because it's like, yeah, I want my character to have limitations like a real character, like a real fucking character.
It did create the team building. You know, you may be the character who can tumble and jump and blah blah blah, but your climb may be crap. But so and so over here who doesn't necessarily jump and tumble a whole lot, but he's stout and he's got good strength, and so this fool can climb up a sheer rock wall with just this force alone. You know what I mean? He's like, I can get up that wall. And it's like, oh, sweet, dude, get up that wall. And while you're at it, let me ride your back, because you got, you know, strength is your dump stat. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
you know, and it makes you more reliant as a group, for sure.
Yeah, well, and it makes for interesting situations, because it's like, man, how are we going to do this and get everybody up there?
And that's
I can get up there. But you
so
can't.
You are addressing the con of one of the cons of 5th edition.
That's my whole thing about 5th edition. Well, why I just can't get behind it.
There is the pro, you know. I mean,
exactly.
The fact that it has brought so much attention. People are watching critical. Excuse me. People are watching Critical Role. They're watching
exactly. It's built a large community
Any Arcade,
around it.
C Team, Acquisition Inc. They were watching Camera Dice, Action Roll. You know, Gray Force was another good one. You know, there are. And that's all based on 5th edition. 5th edition has opened the door for a lot of pop culture and interesting aspects. I mean, you know, Xavier Woods, the pro wrestler, he actually plays with the guys in Acquisition Inc. as a guest character. And he was so likable that they have brought him back for like several of the sessions in a row, just because he's so popular. You would have never necessarily gotten that back in the day.
Man, exactly, you know what I mean? Because D&D used to be the thing that was for nerds.
Yeah,
right?
and while I'm not like a huge, like, I'm not trying to get off on wrestling right now, you know?
Right.
Though that is another subject I do know a lot about. Maybe that could be something we talk about if I'm a returning guest. But I mean, anybody who watches wrestling knows that Xavier Woods is in a tag team called the New Day and all that. I'm not a New Day fan. New Day, they started off interesting and then they became like faces, and they're just it's just crap. They're just crap. Like,
But then they became mainstream and just totally sold
yeah.
out.
I mean, they were funny when they were trolls, you know.
Right.
But you know, so while I don't necessarily like his wrestling persona, I appreciate him on Penny Arcade at the pack shows, the acquisitioning pack shows. I appreciate his character on that. Man, I wish I could remember his name. I think his like last name is like Wazowski or something like that. It's ridiculous. He is a ridiculous character, but he's a barbarian. He kills things. He's funny. I mean, he's got a lot of charisma. 5th edition opened up the door for things like this. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Well, and here's the thing, too. I know saying that, I'm going to... If somebody, somebody's probably going to watch this eventually and get in the comments and be like, I love 5th edition. It is therapy to me. Yeah, exactly. D&D is therapy to everybody, no matter what edition you're playing, Don't take what I'm saying and run it through your childhood, you know what I mean? Just because I'm not attacking you personally, you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to attack anybody by being like, I don't like 5th edition, Like, I'm not it's just that I think it's okay to criticize something.
That's hilarious, through your childhood. Don't take
that's Bill Burr.
Through your child. I know.
Bill Burr says that.
It cracks me up because that's...
That's exactly what it is. You think that I'm taking... Well, the general you.
Yeah, I'm not attacking... You're not attacking their life situation.
Exactly. Just because I'm criticizing something doesn't mean that I'm being
and the
like...
changes of the... Yeah. No,
Exactly.
I get it. Yeah.
But I know some people don't, so that's why I'm making the disclaimer, bro. If you can't handle something you like being criticized, then you're not gonna like this podcast because I'm critical.
Well, and
a critical role.
Oh, he said it. He said it. Shut up. You want to get sued? Anyways, though, so they that's the pros though, but the cons we've already gone over. The fact that there are, while introducing while introducing so many people to the game, they have now introduced a lot of trolls to the game.
Right.
People who only want to play so they can live out their critical role fetishes and stuff like that. It's like, and then they're playing neutral characters so they can be trolls and blah blah blah. And it's like, and so as a result of that.
Quick question. Sorry to stop you. Sorry to interrupt. When you say live out their critical role fetishes, do you mean that they are literally taking these people's characters and playing as their characters so that they can do it their own way?
From what I understand, just from watching channels like Crit Crab, Paula, I gave you a shout out, Crit. I don't always like your stories. Some of your stories, I'm like, you're way off base. But I mean, on this one story line you gave one time, yeah, I understood it. So I thought, yeah, that right there is a horror story. But yeah, and other ones that I've heard of, a lot of the channels that I've seen in these horror stories involving Critical Role and the people playing out their Critical Role fetishes usually involve something to the effect of they will create that exact same character and the only difference is the name.
I see, even down to like
their backstories.
It's the
everything.
Same character, like race, class.
All of it.
Just with a different name.
They just change that, and then they get mad at the DM because he doesn't DM like Matthew Mercer. Well, Matthew Mercer would have, and it's like, well, okay, well, that's great what Matthew Mercer
Well, why don't you find a way to get into Matthew Mercer's game group?
I got nothing against Matthew Mercer, but I mean, it's
of course not. He's good at what he does. That's
Yeah,
not the
but
point, though.
I mean, yeah, the point is the fact that it's like, yeah, but I mean, and like I've stated this to you before.
Hey, look at my
yes,
face. Do I look like Matt Mercer?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
And I've stated this to you in the past. You know, Matt, as good as Matthew Mercer is, he's not the best DM I've ever seen. You know what I mean?
Well, sure.
Really
Well,
not.
here's the
I mean,
thing.
like,
It's a matter of opinion. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying that to bash him. You know.
Well,
I'm just
no,
saying,
I know
like,
what you mean.
I think, well, my favorite, anyways, if I had to say my favorite, wouldn't be Matthew Mercer. My favorite would be Jerry Holcroft's, because I told you he does the theater of the mind style D&D, where there's no set pieces, it's all just in your head, blah blah blah. The way that man weaves his words together,
You could tell he's been playing it a long time.
you can see it, like trying to describe certain things. You know, he's described things that I know for a fact Matthew Mercer wouldn't be able to describe without some kind of visual aid. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Jerry Holcroft, he can describe things like, he's like, it's a sphere and it opens up, but like orange peels and blah blah blah. You know what I'm saying? Like it peels away like a blooming orange peel.
Well,
it's like, oh my gosh, I actually see that. It's made out of pure stone, and just the fact that he can pop that off, you know, is just incredible. You know?
Right. Well, it's the difference between show and tell. You know what I mean? That's like a writing technique, show don't tell. You know? It's the difference between he started crying and his eyes stung as they began to well with tears. You know what I mean? That's why it's so like, I can see that, because he describes it really well. And I get what you're saying, that it's like unique in the sense where it's like he's good at describing something really abstract that you might not be able, that it would be hard to describe in and of itself. You know what I mean? Or at least I think that's what you're getting at.
Oh yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
The best DM, I think, though, that I've ever seen was Chris Perkins. And I don't know if he's still DMing or not. He DM'd for Acquisitioning, and he DM'd for Dice Camera Action, but it was a different in the styles, I guess. Like with Acquisitions Inc., he was doing something different. His best DMing chops, though, was for Dice Camera Action, and that's just because of the way he did the story. He's good at describing things like Jerry Holcroft's, maybe not as good, but he's good at it. And he can keep you engaged like Matthew Mercer, but the tale he weaves and the things he puts you through, you kind of feel it. Like he's brutal as crap, for one, you know? And it's good stuff, right? And if it wasn't for 5th edition, we wouldn't have these gentlemen here, like, entertaining us. You see what I'm saying? Right. So hats off to all three of them, just as an example. You know what I mean? Hats off to all three of them for being good at what they do individually. And, you know, thank you, 5th edition, for becoming popular and being able for people to enjoy it and understand Dungeons and Dragons enough that these guys could come into our lives and we could watch it.
Right. Well, and it's done a lot for the industry in general. You know what I mean? Think about how many modular packs and things like minifigures and how accessible and available those things are now, and how broad they are in general. We wouldn't have those things otherwise if it wasn't.
You can get them
more
now
popular.
At Walmart. Yeah,
exactly.
You can get them now at Walmart instead of having to go to specialty shops.
Specialty shops, or even order them online now. You know, like, so. Yeah, you know, it has done a lot of positive things just for the game in general. You know, I don't want anybody to think I just hate 5th edition. I don't hate 5th edition.
I know. I'm not.
It's just not my jam. You know, I know you don't. I just mean anybody watching this. You know,
not off base with what you're saying. You're not off base at all, because that is one of the cons. What you're saying, everything you said, your complaints about 5th edition is one of the cons.
That's why I don't play it. That's my complaint.
Is one of the cons. The fact that because of the fact that so many people have been introduced to it. You're getting too many trolls, and one of the things that is getting taken away that some people are saying, we need to get rid of it.
They're missing the they're
alignment.
getting rid of the essence. They're missing the point of the game.
Yeah, because they're saying get rid of alignment, because if we do, then everything is neutral, and then it'll take care of the trolls, but it won't. You're just letting the trolls win. Then you're letting the guys who want to come in and have that edgy character, you know what I'm saying, win. And it's like, first of all, I'm not against the edgelord character if done right. First of all, if done right, it's a great character.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think of one in particular, and I had his name, but I can't think of him now. So I'm not gonna sit here and get dumbfounded about it for too long. But
it was Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yeah, no, I don't think that was a great edgy character at all.
I'm just kidding.
No, I was trying to think.
I like Shadow the Hedgehog, but not. Well, yeah. I'm not gonna get into that.
Yeah,
there's a lot that I have to complain about Sonic the Hedgehog, but go ahead.
There is right now, if you go to like Dungeons and Dragons on YouTube and stuff like that, and you watch their campaigns, the different campaigns that they show people playing now, because there's a lot of them. There's a new one that came out not too long ago, and boy, I wish I could remember its name so I could give it a shout out, but it's got people like Anna Posser, if I'm saying her name right, Anna Posner.
Yeah, I don't know. Familiar.
She was on Dice Camera Action. She played, and I know her character's name better than I know her real name, Evelyn. And a lot of people who are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons will know who I'm talking about. She's in a new campaign. And one of the characters in that campaign is this edgy dude, and he does all right. I mean, I'm not just sitting there being like, oh, he's just. No, I mean, he's edgy, yeah, but he's edgy in a cool way, And so it's okay, But don't take out one of the core mechanics of the game, one of the best storytelling tools you have that not only help you define your pantheon, the gods, but also help you define the characters and the social structures of your world if you homebrew them. Nothing against modules, but if you homebrew, it is a very handy tool to have. Is alignments. I mean, they just are. You can't really get rid of them, and if you do get rid of them, in the sense where keep them in the back of your mind at least, so you know how to justify everything that happens. Don't just let the players do whatever they want and make them feel like it's deserved.
Right. Just to go back real quick, it's Anna Prosser. I did that quick Google for you.
Yeah, thank you. Anna Prosser, yes. She's become real popular in the Dungeons and Dragons community. Because she's got a really popular character, Evelyn. And Evelyn has, as a character, has crossed over not only from Dice Camera Action, but she's gone into Acquisitions Inc. before. You know what I mean? Popular character. She's also lawful good, and you get rid of. That's a fine example of worships the god Lathander. She's lawful good. If you get rid of the alignment, you take away Lathander's light, as the joke is said on that show. You know what I mean?
Sure.
What is she? I mean, the thing that makes her character so admirable, and the thing that people like about her character, is the fact that she's lawful good. I mean, honestly, is the fact that she plays like a lawful good person, and she has that in her mind.
Good, the alignment thing. How do you get a paladin? How do you get a warlock? It's important. It's important to the game, you know? Like, sure, they have ways that you can do that for different alignments. You know what I mean? You don't have to be a righteous paladin. You can be an unrighteous paladin for an evil god. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, you could argue that's what a warlock is, but I mean, it's still paladin. You know, you get what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, but honestly, like, don't get rid of it. Just if it doesn't seem like it's working, it's like we're going
Tweak
back.
it?
Yeah, going right back to the beginning of this whole podcast. We mentioned Gary Gygax. You know, the secret that the DMs must never know. You know what I mean? And I don't know why he said it in such a way as in like they shouldn't know, but I think it's just because he was just trying to pay his bills.
Well, yeah,
you know?
that's exactly
But
it. He's just yanking the chain a
money,
little bit.
yeah.
You know what
It's
I
a
mean?
money
He's just
thing,
saying,
and
you know, if
Gary Gygax was a character.
we wouldn't sell books if you know,
basically, yeah.
if people knew they could do this.
He was kind of the first troll, and he trolled his own game. But like honestly, he going back to that though, the idea is that if you don't need to follow the books 100%, you don't need to rules lawyer it. If you have a problem with the alignment system, tweak it, grow,
or just don't put it in your game.
Yeah, or
you
don't
know?
put and you know, you don't put it in your game, you know, but keep it somehow. Keep alignment somehow in your mind. You have to have it. Like, I mean, you have to have it, or you don't. Oh, okay, you don't have to have it.
Here's
You
the
could
thing.
have a game
Here's
of
the
nothing
thing.
but Mary Sue's. You could have a game where everybody
Exactly.
is just
If that's your
hedonistic
jam,
and blah blah
then
blah.
do your thing. I don't care. You know, just don't expect me to do it, and don't expect
don't
other
rally for
people to
be
do it.
taken wholeheartedly out of the thing, and because there are people out there who love to play the game by the book. You know?
Exactly. Well, and that's another thing is like, you know, you could make the exact same argument. Well, it's like, well, if you want to use it, then put it in your game. How are people going to know to use it if it's not in the guidebook? It's a guidebook. It's not a rule book.
I have a friend. His name is Eternall Newbie. He's also got a channel. There you go, buddy. There's a shout out. You know, but you know, Eternall Newbie, he has gone on record before stating that he likes to play this game by the rules. That he likes to follow
Exactly.
the rules.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And that's what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you take the alignment idea out of the rule book, if you rally for that to just be taken out wholeheartedly, then you've taken something away from players.
You gotta
like
restructure the whole book.
Yeah, then you've taken something away from players like him too. You know? Just make it an optional thing, you know? I mean, if you tell it that it's just optional, then people who, you know, some people just need that little
just
push
put it
to
in
get
the book that it's
the creative juices flowing. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people who need, you know, help. I myself looked at that and tweaked it myself. You know, you know that gods work differently in my campaign. Alignments work differently in my campaign. A lot of things too, work differently. You know? Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't necessarily need that push. I use the rule books as guidelines. You know,
I used it to learn the rules, you know, to learn so that I can do it that way.
Yeah,
you know?
to quote Barbosa,
I learned it. Yeah.
They're more of guidelines than rules, really. You know? Like,
exactly.
Yeah, but if you take them completely out, if you erase them, then you've. Hold on. Sorry, Tyrone was asking me a question here.
You're fine. Well, another thing though is like how do you know that you don't need them if they weren't there in the first place? You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
That's just my whole point, you know?
Don't erase it completely. You know, you don't have to have gods in your game. You don't have to have alignments in your game, this and that. But keep them around as option.
Right.
You know, keep it around as options because, and I will go as far as to saying, and I don't care. This is an opinionated statement. I don't care, but I will say that with those though, with alignments and at least having the aspect of some kind of gods, you know what I mean? It does help to create a richer experience in a sense. You
I
know,
agree.
you don't have to have a game where your gods are always like up in everybody's business. You know what I mean? You can have a game where the gods are known, but they're just absent, kind of. You know what I mean? They're just letting people live their lives and blah blah blah, and then
It's
maybe
kind of how it
because
is in my world a little bit.
yeah, and you're leaving it to the imagination to where
It's
you know
more like they're
maybe
dormant.
one day as the creator, you're leaving it to your own imagination that maybe one day my characters will become strong enough that I will introduce them to a god. You know?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, beyond that, what I what do you have? Like you just I guess what I'm warning is don't let everything just be subjective. Sure, do a sliding scale. I've given plenty of example of how to have a sliding scale, you know, but don't just make it subjective where, you know, one minute your character can be the most virtuous and the next they can just be crappiest and it's all right because it's all subjective. No. You know, give them a reason as players to grow, you know. If they start off evil, well, okay, they're evil. Now they can either take that path to where they become even way worse, or they can maybe this is a story of redemption where they start off as evil characters and they become good, you know? They learn humanity. One of the best RPG stories I ever heard was a person's campaign where I don't know, man, I don't even know how many people were playing this, and I don't even really know if this was an actual campaign or just a short story, but it's about an ogre who finds a sword, a talking sword, right? Now he's an ogre. Ogres eat, sleep, kill. You know, that's what they do. They're just ogres, you know? But he finds this magical talking sword that belonged to this virtuous paladin one time, and he finds it, and it starts talking to him, and it explains to him that it's this virtuous sword, and it blah blah blah, and it does this, it does it for righteousness, for good, in the name of good. It's used for the name of good, and the ogre just looks at it and he goes, "Well, what is good?" He asks it, "Well, what is good?" And it says, "Well,
Yeah.
you know, well, okay, what is good? Okay, that's a you know," and it says,
Interesting
"Well, you know,
question.
well, it tells him, you know, doing something for others, you know, without any expectance." Or something to that effect. I'm probably butchering this story a little bit. Something to
Sure.
that effect. And he says, you know, I don't understand what you mean. He goes, why do something, you know? I mean, they like, and so the sword says, okay, I understand what you're asking. Because basically the ogre just looks at it as if I'm hungry, I take. If it's in my way, I smash. If I, you know what I mean?
Right.
And the sword's like, okay,
What's
okay,
wrong with that?
yeah, I'll show you. And that's what the sword says. I'll show you. And the rest of the story is basically every once in a while, like something will be happening, and the sword will be like, "Go help those people." Be like, "Why?" And the sword will just be like, "Because." She's just like, "Because."
It's good.
Just trust me. I'm trying to show you. And so the ogre does, right? Well, by the end of the story, the point of the end of the story is one night a bad storm comes through and starts flooding this village, and the sword tells the ogre, "Go help those people. Do the sandbags, do all that stuff, you know, just go help them." And he's like, "Why?" And she says, "Just trust me. You've always wanted to know what good is. Just do it." And so he does. And that ogre spends the whole night stacking up sandbags, keep, you know, saving people, putting them on roofs, you know, just spends the whole night, the full 24 hours, just saving people, going through this entire village, just saving people, right?
Sure.
Well, he wears himself out really bad and he faints. And when he wakes up, he finds himself in this barn, and he's covered up, and he's laying on like straw, and he's been taken care of, and any wounds he suffered from, all that has been dressed and everything. And there's people coming to the door checking on him, and they're leaving him food, and he's eating and everything. And he's like, I don't get it. Well, are you usually afraid of me, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, because think about what you did last night.
You helped them.
Look at what look what you did for these people and this and that. And he's like, and they're care of me now. She's like, yeah, because you're their friend. And he just tells the sword, he goes, I think I understand what good is now.
Yeah.
If you don't have an idea of alignment in your head, if you just make everything subjective and you don't do a sliding scale for certain situations, but everything is just subjective, then you don't have something as beautiful as what that story is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I said I wasn't going to get into this, but I think I might, right? It's the Nuremberg trials after World War II. I'm just going to be real brief about it, you know what I mean? I'm not going to go off on a whole tangent. But essentially, after World War II, there were some trials held for some of the enemy forces, right? That were like, you committed these atrocious acts against the world, you know what I mean? What say ye in your defense type thing, And they were like, well, they were essentially like, we were just following orders. There's a lot more to it. So if you want to look into it some, go for it, But they were essentially like, we're just following orders. And it was ruled, nah, dog. Some things are just fundamentally wrong, You can recognize as being fundamentally wrong. And doing things like what they did to the Jews during the Holocaust is fundamentally wrong. You can recognize that as wrong. It's wrong. You either just don't care or desensitize yourself to the fact that you're doing something wrong and eventually learn to stop caring. You know what I mean? So there is a concept of good and evil that all people understand,
And I 100% agree with that. I 100% agree with that.
When you're committing an evil act, when you're doing something wrong, it's wrong when you do it. It's wrong. Everybody does. And I don't believe a single person that says, unless they have something that...
There could be some kind of circumstance.
Right. Unless
there could be some kind of circumstance
right?
where they just were taught, they could have been just taught what is evil is right and what is right is evil too.
Yeah, that too.
And there is no such thing as an evil pupil, only an evil teacher sometimes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The whole world isn't absolute, so I'm not going to say absolutely everybody, right? I think that's fair. But for the general person, the general person that you meet is going to know what is fundamentally right from wrong. You know what I mean? What is good and what is evil, And that is because when you look at something being done, you ask yourself, man, would I like that to happen to me? Would I like to be thrown into a train so that I could be shipped off to my death? You see what I'm saying? No, that's evil. Some things are evil. It's just, that's how it is. There's a hard good and there's a hard evil. Where you draw that line is kind of subjective, but you could take a look at some things and be like, nah, that's absolutely evil.
Yeah, I do.
The thing about being good is that it can be deceptive, but that's a whole conversation that
and that goes back to that sliding scale that I was talking about, like with like what we mentioned earlier with Eli Cunning, that's a sliding scale. Sometimes doing good, the road to hell is sometimes paved with good intentions. Yeah,
well,
so you
and
could
I
say
think
in a D&D sense, the road to the abyss is paved with good intentions,
right, and I would also argue that sometimes people are seemingly good but not. That's this person's doing a good act, but what do they stand to gain from it? What's their ulterior motive?
Yeah, and in a way, that's kind of like playing a neutral character, like somebody who that also can be a neutral character depending on. Yeah, I mean,
depending on how evil they're willing to get.
And then and then understanding neutral characters, sometimes the neutral character, like I said back when I started playing, that's kind of how we looked at neutral in a sense, where I'm gonna do this, but I've got to get something out of it. That doesn't necessarily make them evil. That is
pretty neutral. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily make them evil because they may not be willing to help the villains no matter what the villain offers them because they're not necessarily.
It doesn't have to, but if they're doing a good thing but what they stand to gain from it is something evil. You know what I mean? Like, then it's evil disguised as good. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. You see what I'm saying? It's the Lord of the Rings. It's the One Ring. Giving Boromir the One Ring so he could protect his people, but ultimately he's just gonna do evil with it.
You're right, exactly. Yeah. Because what he really wants is power.
Yeah, he wants the power to defend his people. He thinks, like Galadriel said, you would give that to me what Gandalf says, in the movie anyways, not so much in the book, but in the movie he says, you would give me this ring and I would take it with only an intention to do good, but it would twist me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's a really good example. It's still just not quite the mark that I'm trying to hit, right? It's like gaining your trust so that I can come into your house and rob you blind. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You see what I'm
you're
saying?
Talking about like being a con artist.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, and that could be a neutral character too. I mean, honestly, the best con artists,
I guess so,
make good neutral characters, just in the sense where, so you're not being like a total evil person. You're not gaining this person's trust so you can come into their house and murder them, but you're gaining their trust so you can come in there and rob them blind and leave.
Right.
Still makes you a bad person, but you're not a wicked person,
grooming a child crappy. Or giving a child candy so that they'll get in your van.
Oh yeah, you're Woody Allen raising a child just so you can hang it when it's of age.
Right, exactly. Yeah, well, that's not necessarily even a good thing disguised as a bad thing. I mean,
that's not even.
Giving a child candy is good, but not when it's so that they'll get in your van, not so that they'll trust you. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
being nice to somebody
so that I lost that. I lost the plot there for a minute. My bad.
Yeah,
I was just
you're good.
What a crap dude!
Yeah.
That's a piece of crap dude. Yeah. So is the guy who gives the child candy so they'll get in his van.
Exactly, because he's actually evil. He's just committing a good act disguised as, or he's committing an evil act disguised as good. You know what I mean? He's giving a child candy. That's good. Kids like candy, whatever. But he's doing it so that he can mislead them.
And sometimes, and I'm going to say in the agreement too, going with not an agreement, but I'm going to say too, just following this conversation with the idea of earlier, I was saying something about the sliding scale is subjective. Does this villain, what made this villain the way that made them, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
Right.
And how that's another problem we run into sometimes because, I'm going to go as far as to saying too, not everything needs to be understood. Not everything's motives need to be understood.
I guess fair enough.
some villains are just villains,
Are
and you
just
don't
evil.
need to understand why they're evil. You know,
Okay.
they may have a reason for why they're evil, but do we always need to know why they're evil? We just know that what they're doing is bad.
Alfred
And
talks about
sometimes,
that in The Dark Knight. Some people
yeah,
just want to watch the world burn. You know what I mean?
exactly. Some people are just bad. I mean, and you know, it could have a traumatizing story too. You know, I mean, the
Well,
Joker,
sure.
he just wants to watch the world burn, but the Joker also
It
had a
tells you a
bad day
couple of
once.
stories.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he had a bad day once, like Batman, only he went the opposite direction with it than
exactly.
Batman did. Batman chose to take that and try to do good with it. Joker took that and is trying to do something bad with it, you know? Uh do we really need to understand why at this point?
No, not
We
always.
don't, do we?
Because
No,
sometimes it's like,
we just
well,
need the Dark
regardless
Knight to
of what
stop
he's
this
doing,
dude.
he's still trying to
Yeah.
blow up a hospital.
Yeah, we just need the Dark Knight to stop this dude. I'm sorry.
Screw him.
That sucks. It sucks for you. It does. It really does. And clearly, whatever happened, it
But you
messed you
also
up.
clearly
Yeah.
don't care.
But clearly, what you're doing is wrong. And so
Right.
we don't always need to understand either. You know what I mean? Like there's this need to always know, to always have to understand. No, sometimes you don't,
That's
man.
human nature, yeah.
You don't always have to have an open mind, you know? Like you should treat your mind like a house. If something comes up to your house, if somebody comes up to your house in the middle of the night and knocks on your door and you've never seen them before, are you gonna let them in?
Right. Well, your body
No?
is the temple, you know?
Exactly. You treat your mind that same way, man. You don't always have to be so open-minded. You can take in what you've got and then
Right.
decide, am I going to let this foreign information, this stranger into my house?
Right, think
You
for
know what I mean?
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to be pigeonholed into being just open-minded all the time. That's because not everything is okay.
Right.
It's just not. You know,
Right.
we really don't know what happened to the Joker. And maybe, you know, maybe whatever happened to him because he wasn't okay. You know, we
Right.
don't know. We don't know.
You don't know.
And that's the whole point, you know. What we could learn on the surface would just make us maybe feel sorry for him, and some things just don't need to be felt sorry for.
Right.
Sometimes you just have the villain. You gotta smote his ruin on the mountainside, man.
Right.
So, you know, going that with alignment.
That's how that plays into alignment. You know what I mean? So,
Exactly.
I don't know if I missed this, but I'm going to take another step back. Since we've been going on for a little bit. We've been going on for about 2 hours, so we should probably be wrapping it up soon. Let's talk about how this all plays into your idea of the Pantheon.
Yes. So we've been building up to that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to keep drawing it back to the Pantheon too much.
Sure. Well, I get it.
I kind of wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, you wanted to touch upon that later on. Yeah. Now that we've touched upon the rest of it.
Your Pantheon needs to reflect that. In that sense, really. I mean, a Pantheon really should reflect that. It really should. I'm going to advise that it should. I'm not going to say it has to. I'm going to advise that it should.
In what way?
In the sense
in
where...
relation to what, I guess?
Like I was saying, what is the difference between Obot High and Narrow?
Okay.
Alignment.
I see.
What is the difference between Paylor and St. Cuthbert without alignment? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see.
Like, I mean, because Paylor will still deliver out his form of righteous judgment. You know what I'm saying? But he's not the god of retribution.
Right. Okay.
St. Cuthbert is.
We
and
did
St.
talk about
Cuthbert, in 3.5, I know for a fact St. Cuthbert is neutral. He is lawful neutral, I believe. I may be wrong, but but I'm pretty sure he's lawful neutral. I made him neutral good. I changed him around to neutral good because that made more sense to me in the sense where he's more like trying to uphold justice. He's delivering out retribution to the just and the unjust alike. The sun rises and falls on the just and the unjust alike. See what I'm saying?
Right.
In other words, if you're good and you do good and blah blah blah, he's gonna hand out good retribution. If you're good and then you go bad and blah blah blah, he's giving you your retribution for that. If you're evil and blah blah blah, he's giving you out retribution for that. If you're evil and you turn good, he's giving you you see what I'm saying?
Right.
It makes it make more sense in that sense where he's trying to do what is right.
He's lawful neutral.
Through the neutral good now is what it is.
Well,
I didn't mean to say lawful.
Oh, no,
neutral.
I mean, he's actually lawful neutral.
Yeah, he's lawful neutral in 3.5, but
Right.
I made him neutral good.
Right,
for that
yeah,
sense
I understand that. I mean,
ultimately, he's trying to do
like
good.
What he is in the books.
Yeah. Ultimately, he's trying to do good, but he's not doing it in the same sense that Paylor is, where it's like, doesn't matter, good, then you're good. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you can't trick him nearly as much. He's going to question your motives, more or less.
Right.
You can't just come up to St. Cuthbert and be like, well, I follow you. And he's going to be like, well, why do you follow me?
For what purpose?
It's like Adam and Eve, God's like looking for Adam, and he's like, where are you guys, when they ate the apple, and then they realized they were, or it wasn't an apple, who knows what it was,
fruit.
It just says they ate the fruit, they realized they were naked, they jumped in, and then they were ashamed, and they jumped in the bush, and God came looking for Adam, and he's like, Adam, where are you? Who told you were naked? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's that same reasoning, that same line of thinking, Well, I want to follow you. Well, why do you want to follow me?
Right.
Yeah, like, you give me your reasoning. Because it stems to say in the Bible, before Adam and Eve ate the fruit, they didn't understand reason. They didn't have a form of reasoning in that sense, right? Adam can now reason. He becomes ashamed that he's naked. And God's like, oh, so you can reason now. Well, give me your reasoning. It's basically God saying, how did you learn to reason? You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
That's what St. Cuthbert's doing. If you don't, this is how this all goes to your pantheon. If you're going to create a pantheon, give your pantheon alignments. If you take away alignments, your pantheon doesn't have alignments, and you're taking away. Now, if you don't have gods, if you're one of those people where it just completely offends you to even make believe gods because you don't believe in a god in real life, so you're offended by making ones on games for whatever reason. First of all, let the anger go. Second of all, then that's fine. Then that's 100% fine. You don't have gods in your game. Your world doesn't have a god. The campaign of Dark Sun in D&D, one of the oldest D&D modules there is on that world, there is no gods. There's no gods. That is a completely godless world. And that campaign is one of the funnest and most freaking unforgiving modules you can play. Settings you can play in. So it's not like it can't work. And oddly enough, there's alignments in that setting, So I mean, you can still do it. You can have a campaign, pantheon-free, alignment-free campaign, but tweak it. Don't get rid of it 100%. Just tweak it. Allow yourself to give yourself that room to grow as a storyteller or as a player. And that's how that all fits in with the pantheon, is the fact that if you don't have alignments, what kind of personality is your pantheon going to have? Like, one of the funnest things about D&D is the fact that you get to create gods, and you can follow the strict law of the letter and say, well, like I said, St. Cuthbert is lawful neutral in 3.5, so he's lawful neutral now. Or you can say he's lawful neutral in 3.5, but I think if I made him neutral good, I could do this with him. And give him this personality.
Yeah.
And give your gods personalities. Make them kind of flawed, in fact, because they're just it's not. This isn't real world religion where we believe, whatever religion you belong to, whether it be like Christianity or Islam or Judaism or whatever, where we believe that the one God is infallible. The key word there is the one God, right? D&D is a spectrum of
multiple
God.
gods. Well,
Yeah.
and even in a lot of religions, like, for example, Hinduism, that have multiple gods, or the Egyptians and their multiple gods.
Mm-hmm.
A lot
Or the
of
Greeks or the
well,
Norse.
I don't like to look at the Greeks because the Greeks typically acknowledge the flaws in their gods. What I was gonna say is in a lot of like Hindu and Egyptian with their stories, a lot of theirs have some flaws with their gods, but it's more about how they overcome these flaws to become perfect beings. Does that make sense? And I
Oh
guess
yeah.
even to
Mm-hmm.
some degree, when you take a look at Christianity, that's kind of how. Well, I don't want to say that's how Jesus is because, Christians consider Jesus to have always been a perfect being to some degree when he was born, right? But that's kind of the idea that he's trying to convey to his disciples, I think,
Yeah.
overcome your flaws so that you can become like me, right?
Better.
Better,
Yeah, the
become
idea
more
behind
like
Jesus, you
me.
could say, is the idea behind Jesus is he had to overcome the flaws of the world. Being flawless, he himself had to overcome the flaws of the world, which would still be hard.
Sure. And well,
Because
and
if you think about it, if you're the one flawless person walking the earth in a flawed world, you are outnumbered. You know what I mean? You are consistently outnumbered.
right.
You
Well,
know?
and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are probably some places in the Bible that say Jesus was always perfect, but I also know that there's a good 30 years of Jesus's life missing. Who's to say that he didn't have to go through his own hero's journey to become perfect? Does that make sense? Do you
Well,
think
and I would say
when
I
he
would
was,
venture.
if from a Christian perspective, are Christians just expected to believe that Jesus had always been that way, or are they supposed to believe that
You
he
know,
became that way? Did God
I
gift him with
can't
this?
speak.
I think
I
that's
can't
probably
speak for
interpretation.
all. Oh, yeah, I can't speak for all Christians or
I
anything
guess
like
that's
that. But
fair because all Christians
I would
believe
say what
differently.
differently. Yeah, it's
It's
factual, but
projection.
yeah, I would say that
Interpretation.
I know. Speaking of the hero's journey, just looking at Jesus and saying his hero's journey, I would say one of the aspects behind a hero's journey for Jesus would have just been, in general, the idea of, because we're talking about the Bible and what, there are parts in the Bible that specifically say Jesus was there.
He was what?
He was there. He was with
Oh,
God
I see.
the whole time, like in the beginning of the world. God says, "Come, let us make man in our image." He's speaking in plural, so he's talking to somebody. Talking to Lucifer, talking about the prophecy of the crucifixion, just different things like that. The fact that Jesus was always there, and the fact that, okay, so if you're gonna, for argument's sake, if you're gonna look at it this way, so you believe in God, you believe in Jesus. So if God's a being that has always been, and Jesus was always with him, then Jesus is a being who's always been. Neither one of them would have ever had to have known death, yet Jesus agreed to come to earth and die. See what I'm saying?
Sure.
So one part of, a flaw that he could be working on, in a sense, you could say, is the idea that he's growing up knowing he's gonna die, and he's never had to face death before, and he's not just gonna die in a kind way either.
Agonizing, yeah.
He's gonna die at the hands of Romans who literally pay and train people to know the art of torture. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, like, that would be scary for anybody. It'd be like, being Ariana's age and having to deal with that on a regular basis. And you don't have cartoons on TV to occupy your mind with. All you've got is a stepdad who's a carpenter who's teaching you how to build a chair. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You would think you would dive into that real heavily so you don't have to think about that all the time. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that would be a tough thing, but I really don't want to get off on real world religion too much.
I feel you. It's just the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think to myself, like, you don't have to make perfect gods, though.
Exactly. They don't have to be perfect.
I did.
Well, and
I didn't make them perfect.
That's how you do
made them
the Greek route. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just made them beings who became powerful enough that they could rise to what we would consider gods because they don't die now, or they're just so, you know what I mean? They're unchallengeable by any mortal standards. You know what I mean? But they're flawed. But you know what makes personality is your flaws. You know, that's how you get your personality, is learning from your mistakes and this and that. And again, alignment has a lot to do with that. You know, you're either the Joker who had a really bad day, or you're Batman who had a really bad day. The thing, you know, and in a pantheon, you don't have to look at real world religion and use that as your example. You can look at just, you can make it just so natural and just be like, hey, look, this guy here, he was lawful good in life and he earned his godhood, so he's lawful good in godhood, and he's got this type of personality,
Right.
And it makes them almost like a person. And in a way, then if you do one day decide, hey, my group is strong enough to meet one of these gods, and they meet this god, give him a personality. Don't just make him all, bow before me, you stand on holy ground, unless that's his shtick. He's so pious. I do that, when you Quill met Heronius, one of the things I tried to do, and I really appreciate Robbie's role playing for this when he plays you Quill, because Robbie does pick, he's a veteran like I am.
Right.
And
he goofs off, but he does good. He knows how to role play.
Yeah, and he picked up on exactly what I was doing when he met Hyronius, because where you guys are playing, the gods play a little bit more of an active role, as in like other places of the world where they're worshipped, but their gods don't necessarily, When he got to meet Hyronius, the one thing about Hyronius is I wanted like an idea of sort of like Prince Charming, So every time you Quill and Hyronius were in front of people, Hyronius was talking with a lot of bravado and being like, oh, and acting real pious and blah, 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 And then when it was just you Quill and Hyronius kind of sat back, kind of slouched a little bit, and started talking to him like he was a real person.
Right.
You know what I mean? And Robbie picked right up on that. He was like, he even said it. He was like, I see what you're doing right here. And I was like, oh, you see that? And he goes, yeah. This guy, he just does things for show. You know what I mean? Like, he just,
right.
Because Hyronius's personality is the fact that people expect certain things of him, so he does it.
Well, here's the thing about him as a person, too. Or like Robbie, He's got a pretty decent judge of character. When he's talking to somebody, you Quill and Robbie share this quality where they're not necessarily as stupid as they seem. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? That's how I feel about Robbie.
Yeah.
He plays the dumb card. He's not actually that dumb. He'll pick up. You can't bullshit a bullshitter. Make sense?
Exactly. And that he picked right up on it. Like because of that aspect of Robbie giving that to his character,
Yeah.
you know, he picked right up on what Hieronius was doing. He understood, and Hieronius in my world, if I'm not mistaken, in Loxos, he is. One second.
You checking his alignment?
I am.
Cool.
He is lawful good.
That makes sense.
So he is lawful good. So when he's with the people, he acts lawful good. He's like, haha, justice will be served. And talking to Uquil, and he's like, you'll, be on my side. And Uquil's like, why? And he's like, for good's sake, man, ha ha ha. And then when they sat down, Ironius looks at him and goes, all right, now let's really get that down to rest. It's like, I know that I know who you are. I know what you're about. You're a mercenary, and I'm paraphrasing all this, but you're a mercenary.
Well,
you need something in return, and I know what you need. I got what you need. I will help you if you need. You know what I mean? That's a lawful good character doing that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can slide scale this, because if Robbie had been like, if Uquil had been like, nah, you know what? I think I'm just gonna take a dump on your floor right here. Hieronius would have jumped up and slapped him right to the ground. Just boom, that is uncouth.
Well,
that I will not abide by. You know what I mean? Type of thing. Like,
right.
You can hold on to that. You don't have to be subjective and just say, well, because if you're subjective about it, then Robbie 1 minute Uquil 1 minute could just be acting like a total craphead and then do something good, and Hieronius is just going to be like, you're all right no matter what you do,
Exactly.
If you make it a sliding scale, then you give them that understanding that, yeah, okay.
Well, I would say Android's kind of like that to some degree. To some degree. You know what I mean? He's lawful good, but he's still a little heretical sometimes, I
thought Android was neutral good.
Is he neutral good? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's neutral good.
Is he?
No, he's neutral good.
I'm gonna check, because I'm pretty sure. I'm half.
You'd have to open up. You'd have to open up your character sheet
I'm
right now.
doing it right now. No,
I'm
on it. Like, I'm
pretty sure
that
he's neutral
shit.
good, because
But
I believe Android started off as neutral.
Well, he did.
Turned neutral good
for a
he
while.
wants to be good in the sense where he questions everything. Like, he wants to do the right thing, and so as such, he's going to question what is the right thing in this situation.
Oh, he's lawful neutral.
He's lawful neutral.
That makes a little bit more sense. Well, and I would agree that he's a little bit more neutral good now.
Yeah, I would say so.
I would say he's a little bit more neutral good now. So at some point we could probably
get off on a
change that.
tangent. We're probably going to have to change people's alignments here.
Yeah, not to get off on that tangent.
Everybody's been playing like some.
Yeah.
Which now might be a good time to plug campaign. Like, now that I'm thinking about it.
Because we are going to have to wrap this up soon. We're sitting at 2.5 hours, but yeah, go ahead and plug whatever you want. I was going to say real quick though. Yeah, Android he's still a little heretical sometimes, though. You know what I mean? He still cuts loose. He's not a stick in the mud, Yeah.
Well, I mean, and he just, the thing about Android is that he just doesn't like.
He's just not evil.
He's just not evil. He just won't abide by evil.
Exactly.
And he'll always speak up when he thinks something is wrong and say this is wrong.
Right.
And so, in that sense, and I guess in a way you could say that is like Hieronius, but Android's not doing it for show, and neither is Hieronius
to an extent, but
Hieronius is doing it in a sense where
he understands the idea of Uquil.
Yeah, you could say that Hieronius is
like
doing the bravado because it's what's expected of him.
You're right.
But when he's just with the one-on-one with Uquil, because in Hieronius' own way, he felt, this is somebody who I can be truly blunt with, so I'm going to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
And everything Ironius still was asking of him would be of a lawful good nature. He was just saying it in terms, he was doing it in a way that it kind of like equal footing, you know? I know I'm a god, I know you're immortal, but you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I'm gonna be straight with you here.
Well, sure.
And there's nothing about that says you can't be lawful good and do
Well,
that.
right.
That's
It's
still a
not
lawful
evil
good
to be
attitude.
that way. Because he's
Yeah,
still,
you're still,
yeah.
that's not a gray area. That's just what you call a sliding scale. That's being understanding. I mean, you know, we were talking about Jesus earlier, and Jesus used to eat with prostitutes and things like that. You know, he would eat at
But yeah, it's not
houses
evil
of people
to
that they
talk to
considered.
somebody, to be...
Yeah, well, he would have supper with people who people would consider unclean. You know what I'm saying? And Jesus was just like, well, I mean, they're people, though,
It's a
man.
person.
You know, like basically these are people. You know, a doctor doesn't see healthy people; he sees sick people. You know, and it in a way, it's that same way. You know, you can be real with people and still keep your deal, and that doesn't make it a gray area. That just makes it the sliding scale. That makes it where you have some kind of sense in your head. You know, and that's one of the problems that's happening with alignment is everybody's trying to play it to the letter. You know, that's not. That's you're just shortchanging yourself and you're hurting your own pantheon in doing so, because then your gods are just going to be boring. Make them people. Make them, you know, give them a personality. Give them an attitude. Give them a feeling. And then just keep in mind what their ultimate goal is. If they're lawful good, then no matter how they do it, their ultimate goal is going to want to be good. You know, above all else,
Yeah.
good. You know what I mean? If they're evil, their ultimate goal is going to be evil. No matter what, it's going to be evil. And then you tack on the second thing, you know, chaotic. If they're chaotic evil, they just want the world to burn.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? If they're neutral evil, yeah, you know, I mean, if what does the world burning benefit me? You know,
Sure.
if they're lawful evil, then it's like I don't want the world to burn at all.
Right.
You see what I mean? But I want to corrupt.
But I want to corrupt it. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so on and
It's
so
like a
forth.
mob boss.
Yeah, just keep it all in mind. You know? Yeah. Kind of.
Kind of
Yeah.
like a mob boss. I mean,
keep that all in
well,
mind.
I guess they're not really lawful. But whatever. I'm not gonna get into that.
Yeah, well, they're lawful within their own laws
Right.
that they've structured for themselves.
Exactly.
You know,
They follow a set of rules.
Yeah, the best mob bosses have created laws for themselves.
Right, exactly.
And then they follow them. Yes. So, create your world, give yourself a rich pantheon, give them alignments, and, you know, I mean, advice. If you don't want to, then don't. But if you do, then do it. Then my advice is do it that way and see what you create and just see how much fun you have playing even the gods.
Right.
You know, the gods don't have to be this mysterious thing. You know, you could make them and actually have fun doing it and make them NPC almost. You know, the gods are still your NPCs, man. You know,
right.
Ultimately, you are the creator.
Right, and even though we're using D&D as the set piece, this applies to any role-playing game that you're going to play, you know, just whatever it is. You know, like, there are going to... If you're role-playing a character, then keep that in mind. What are they going to do, and is it motivated by good, or is it motivated by evil, you know? And where do they fall in that spectrum between, like you said? You know?
Yeah, like, you know, in Vampire the Masquerade and in Call of Cthulhu, it's a little harder to make a pantheon just because they are so set in
usually there already
real world. Yeah, like a real world scenario with
right. Well, and
an underworld element. Yeah.
The real world already has a pantheon. You know what I mean?
But I mean,
to some
you've
degree.
got things like D&D, you've got things like Pathfinder, you got things like GURPS. You know,
Right.
things that you can make, that you can really truly just take, that are just like balls of clay with guidelines. You know, it's a ball of clay that comes with instructions on how to make a pot. You know, well, okay, it's telling you how to make a pot, but I mean, what if I add a spout and a handle to it? Can I make a teapot? You know, type of thing. And so those particular three, you know, D&D, Pathfinder, GURPS, they they give you a little bit more freedom in what you can do in an aspect of this. You know, again, nothing against A World of Darkness or Call of Cthulhu. Those
Well,
are
no, it's just
extremely interesting games. Uh,
yeah.
you know, have awesome fan bases, cool storylines. I've seen some amazing set pieces built for Call of Cthulhu and stuff like that.
It's just what you're more
But
familiar with. You're just more familiar
yeah,
with
but
D&D.
again, D&D is the thing that I'm the most familiar with, and it's the thing that's given me the most freedom to do what I want to do with. And so again, you know, let me tell you again about our Lord and Savior Saint Cuthbert and his church. He is a neutral good. He's a neutral good Lord.
Right.
And let me tell you, he's got the personality of an inquisitor. You know,
Man, the guy's a
he
dick
will.
sometimes.
Yeah,
But he's
he
cool. I like St. Cuthbert.
he ultimately wants the right thing to happen by everybody, but he will not. He
He
will
will
not
not
suffer
hesitate,
foolishness.
bitch.
I swear, Rebecca, I swear. So,
Alright, so let's talk plugs. What are you wanting to plug?
so we have been recording the campaign. We've got a couple of recordings on it. You can find those recordings on the Legends of Hustling Misfits channel.
I'll probably put a
One of
link in the description. And,
one of my
yeah.
players, one of our players, Otis, he was mentioned earlier, the Halfling Cleric. He's actually recorded it and put it on there, but you know, we don't pay him to do this, and he's got a lot going on on his plate, just IRL, anyways, in real life. And so, and we've got years worth of recordings, and our sessions, you know, our sessions can last 5 hours, 6
Man,
hours,
yeah.
and you know, that's a
That's a
lot.
lot of footage
And
to dig
for
through,
him not
too.
to get paid to do it, I mean, you know, I can't really blame him for only having 2 actual sessions on there. But what I was gonna do too, and I'm working on a channel. Can't really plug this yet because I don't have anything built. But I think what I'm gonna do is create a channel too, where I'm gonna go back and it's gonna be like story time, where I'm going to just recite the campaign from beginning. Back in the day when there was only 2, Tyrone, my baby boys, Tyrone and Android, and the beginning of the adventures, and just recite it. You know, it won't be like 5 hour long videos or anything
Well,
like
no,
that.
you're just telling the
I can
story.
tell it without, yeah, and get us caught up and everything, which would be interesting too, and recite those, and maybe just add other things like maybe more hintful tips and things. There's a good channel also that you can go to called Dungeoncraft, and that gentleman on that channel, he's got a lot of good advice as well. So I mean, and I want to plug the one thing I do want to plug the most is it is called the channel is called AllThingsDnD, and D&D is like D, capital D, a lowercase n, and then capital D, All Things D&D, and that's where you will find the narrated D&D story Garg and the Moonslicer. Just what is
Oh,
good.
that was the one
And
about the troll. Or ogre, I mean.
yes, and that right there, that is such a good story,
Yeah, that
and I
sounded
feel
like a
like,
good
oh
story.
yeah, check it out when we
Yeah,
get
I
done here,
might.
dude.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Uh, that right there tells you so much about alignment, right there. And honestly, like that that right there will tell you so much about how alignment can play such a rich part of your campaign, and how if it wasn't for your good pantheon, you wouldn't have good alignment. How neither one of them really can coexist without each other very well. Again, I'm not your boss. You do what you want. I don't pay you to play this game.
I ain't your fucking dada.
Want some orange juice? No, I don't want any effing orange juice. What's with you and the effing orange juice? On my head? No, what, they're going to drop you on somebody else's head? Well, how am I going to get dropped on top of my own head? No, not with me.
Are you fucking with me?
Man, I used to watch that movie so much, and then I got kids, and I was like, nope.
It's so funny.
Yeah,
that's Due Date, huh?
Cody. No, that's Bad Santa.
Oh, that is Bad Santa. Oh, yeah, what I'm thinking of in Due Date is the scene where he punches that kid in the stomach.
Oh,
for pulling on his tie. Yeah, that is Bad Santa. Yeah.
No, like I watched that. I watched that one time in front of Cody and my son, Cody, and we made it about as far as when she's sitting there, F me Santa, and I was like, nope,
never mind.
Like, nope. I was like, oh man, like I've been sitting here this entire time.
He's gonna remember this forever.
And yeah, oh man, oh no.
Now he's seen that.
Like the time I bought the South Park movie and started watching it in front of him, and then I was like, we didn't even make it past the first song, and I was like, oh my, I was like, all the things I used to love now make me cringe because I have kids. And you know what? That whole attitude I have right there, that comes from alignment.
Character development.
Yeah, and the gods or whatever, they should have alignment. And if you give them alignment, and just that brief explanation of St. Cuthbert and his church and who St. Cuthbert is and what he does and what he expects, I get that from giving him that alignment, so I know how to treat him when he's, in my head, basically. Right. If the party gets to talk to St. Cuthbert, he's neutral good.
Right.
And he's gonna act. But he's not just gonna be like, I am neutral good.
I am neutral good.
Yeah. No, he's neutral good.
Right.
Ultimately, he wants good to happen, but he's not just saying, well, there's a band of orcs down there, go kill them in the name of good. Orcs are evil. No, he's gonna look at it and say, well, why is there? Who told you you're naked? He's gonna be like, well, what is those?
Well, I guess that's kind of more how Android is to some degree. Really.
Exactly. Like, yeah. I mean, he's gonna be like that, and he's gonna have personality. And if
yeah,
your pantheon can be so rich, by doing that, and don't just leave it to gods. We talked about outsiders earlier too.
Right.
Throw some outsiders into your pantheon because they have worshipers. They have people who will worship them. So throw them in there. Give yourself a little section. Call it whatever you want. Call it cults. Call it primordials. Call it whatever.
Right.
Call them outsiders. Call that section of your pantheon the outsider section, and then dedicate some characters to it and say, okay, now what are their alignments and how? Because these things are different. How do their alignments affect them? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You'll have so much fun doing that. Don't sell yourself short by getting rid of some things and just taking them completely out of the books just because, the industry is saturated now with new players.
That's exactly what it is. It is the oversaturation of new players, I think.
That in fact, it's our responsibility, my responsibility, guys like me who've been playing for a long time, who can easily go to 3.5 and say, yeah, I get that, and go to 5e and say, oh yeah, I get that. Wow, that's even easier. You know what I mean? Who can jump between both worlds and understand what's going on still. It's guys like that, and who are veterans in the game. my responsibility, others like me's responsibility.
Well, to bring this to attention,
Feed
right?
your creativity. You know, it's our job to feed your creativity, not say, well, it's getting too hard and I don't like dealing with crap, so I'm just going to erase it. You know what I mean? It's like, no,
Well,
no.
no, it is, but you don't need to erase it from the guidebook. That's exactly what it is. It is, yeah, I'm going to erase this, but do it in your personal game. Don't do it for everybody. You know, just what it is,
Yeah.
that leaves too much room for just, like, being controlling. You know what I mean? Like, just because you don't want to do it that way doesn't mean that nobody should do it that way. You know
And
what I mean?
nobody likes to get railroaded.
Nobody likes to get railroaded. Exactly. So, whatever. If you don't like alignment, cut it out of your game. Nobody cares. We all do it. You know? As a matter of fact, I haven't talked about my world, like, pretty much at all. My world has pretty much every bit of D&D lore cut from it. The only thing that I follow is basic rules. And in relation to my own lore. You know what I mean? I have
and you know
three
what?
main gods, and not one of them are from the book. And you know what? All three of them were once mortal. You know, I'm not going to get too much into it, because I'm eventually going to write a whole book about that story. But they're, the plane of existence that they govern isn't even where they're from. Does that make sense? It wasn't like they were there before everything. They existed in other universes, right? And the idea is that these universes became aware of one another and began to war with one another as full universes, right? Which, so that for the reason of resource, you know, and prejudice, what war is always fought over. And these three people, it's a person from each universe, right? They all come together and create a universe to separate all universes so that no universe can fight anymore. It's not that the universes exists. They basically make it so that if you're trying to leave your own universe, you get redirected to the one that they created. And it adds an air of convolution to trying to trip realities, I guess. Does that make sense? Because if you attempt to trip a reality, you're going to end up in their universe. It's called Lylan. You know, you're going to end up inside Lylan. And then you're going to be stuck. So, good job, dumbass, you know? That was their whole idea, you know? And they're the gods of that universe, you know? So, what it is it's like when somebody new comes in, you know, somebody trips a reality, they're already aware of them, and they're like, huh, what are you doing here, bud? You know, you're not from this land. You're not native to here, you know? What's your intention, you know? They're kind of like gatekeepers. They guard the realities, the universes, whatever you want to call them, right? But whatever, that's the point, though. You know what I mean? I have my own lore there. You know, you can cut as much of it as you want, you know, and still play the game, right? At least that's my whole thing.
Exactly. I'm sorry. Exactly though. That's exactly what it's all about. Is you can create whatever you want. You know, don't erase it from the books. Is really what I'm saying. Make it, everything should be option.
That's how I feel about it.
And but it's your responsibility if you're the DM, and especially if you're a veteran DM, make those options available.
Well, make it clear that it's optional. I think part of where they go wrong is they call them rule books instead of guidebooks. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a
Yeah,
really like picky thing, I guess. But it's a clear distinction, you know?
it is. It is. And I mean, and again, there are some people who like to play the game by the book, and
And
that's
that's
fine.
fine.
So if you take things out of the book, though, if you take them out of the book, then you've already taken away some people's creativity. And there's nothing wrong with the fact that they need those books, to give them creativity. There's nothing wrong with that. Everything in existence draws from inspiration.
Right.
Everything that we have draws inspiration from something else, anyways.
Exactly.
There's no such thing as original
I
ideas.
agree 100%. Every bit of
So,
my world from the time I've been building this world since I was 7, and Lylan started off as a direct rip-off of Hyrule. And if you look at it and if you read the subtext in a lot of my ideas in some of my writing, that's still kind of apparent that that was the foundation of my idea. You know what I mean? If I were to let you read the outline for the series I'm writing, you know, at least for the first book, you'd be like, wow, okay, so it's Link, but not, you know, right? It's not exactly the same, but it's the idea that it's this person that carries the hero's spirit that is the guardian of this realm, you know? And he's going to be the guardian of this realm. So, yeah, that's like
real
Link.
quick, I've heard some interesting ideas for some campaigns before, where like there's one campaign where you, the players are put in this world that just keeps getting racked by war every so many years, like every 100 years or so,
Mm-hmm.
because this great evil keeps raising up from the dead, right? And it's your job as the party to guide this girl who's this mage. You know what I mean? Got this protector, this knight type of guy, who's quiet. He's just silent, you know, protector of hers. And you help them get to and you're not playing as the central figures, though. You're in essence, you're a supporting cast. You've agreed to be a supporting cast of these two NPCs as you lead them to the ultimate villain. And before they defeat the ultimate villain, he explains to you that the reason why this world keeps getting wrecked every 100 years is because all three of them keep getting resurrected, and that they're tied in this epic struggle to defeat one another and blah blah blah. But their spirits will never die, and the spirits will just resurrect into three new figures and blah blah blah, and the cycle continues. Right? It's basically the Legend of Zelda. That's the campaign. You're basically playing out a D&D-esque Legend of Zelda. Uh, but the only difference is at the end of that, you have a choice to kill the main villain. Only you kill the main villain instead of they kill the main villain, and then you kill them. Just end the cycle, or just help them kill the main villain and let them. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Oh yeah. There's another one about like you're the party, but you're not like knights or anything. You're actually modern day people on a subway, and you're traveling into this tunnel, and you're traveling with this dude behind you, and he looks really dirty. He's wearing this like dirty, dusty cap, like brownish red cap.
Right.
Got on like these coveralls, and he just looks really freaking tired, you know. And he's got this like burly mustache and everything. And then like as you guys are traveling into the tunnel, all of a sudden you get attacked by these like tortoise-looking creatures, you know.
Yeah.
And the guy like stands up and he goes, "Oh no!" And he like helps you guys fight the tortoises, you know. And then when you get off, you come out of the tunnel, and he's like, "Oh, you're not supposed to be here. You better go and get to the exit. The exit's in that castle on the hill, but you're like in this like big old green field with these huge mushrooms." And so you run to the castle and you go through more fights with like different like creatures, like these tortoises and these like living little brown mushroom creatures, you know. And when you get to the end, you think you found the exit, but all that's standing there is this little mushroom guy wearing a mushroom hat, and he says, "Oh, sorry, adventurers, the exit's in another castle."
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do one like that, but Mega Man.
Yeah, like just the different things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty sweet. All right, we should start wrapping this up. We're right at
Okay.
3 hours.
Let me plug this one more time, okay?
All right, go for it.
Just some plugs because I plugged and then we
Do
started
your
talking
thing.
again, and I wanna. So, if you want to see at least 2 sessions of ours, and like again, we're not professional like Critical Role or any of those other great shows, but we're just a bunch of people having fun.
And
doing,
if you got if you get triggered easy, probably don't watch it. Just gonna put that out there.
yeah, sometimes, but
Because let me put it this way:
Tempest
if
has
at
done a
any
good
point,
job at editing. Tempest has done a good job at editing, so.
oh well, I trust
Because
that.
I've watched
But
them, yeah.
if you got offended by this podcast at any point where I was telling you to shut up, then don't watch it. Because you're probably a pussy. I'm just kidding. But I'm not.
With that being said, yeah, you can watch at least a couple of our sessions. We're just a bunch of people playing old school D&D 3.5. Watch it. If you're a 5th edition player and you're curious about 3.5, watch that and you'll learn some of the mechanics. I've changed some of these rules around, though, to suit me. Again, it's been stated, I've changed things. They're guidelines for me, the books. They're not law, So, but, I mean, you'll get an idea of how it works anyways. Yeah, it's on the channel Legends of Hustling Misfits.
It's probably on screen right now.
Yeah.
Editing
also,
wizardry.
We talked about that Anna Prosser.
Yeah.
And her new D&D campaign thing that's going on with her. That is called Knights of Eveningstar, and you can find that on the D&D Beyond channel. So that's Knights of Eveningstar on the D&D Beyond channel. Check out AllThingsDnD, narrated story, D&D story, Garg, and the Moonslicer. Just what is good. I'm probably gonna watch that again just to bone up on it, just because it was such a fabulous story.
That sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, Garg and the Moonslicer on All Things D&D. Check out Dungeoncraft for good D&D advice. If you like funny D&D stories, check out a guy named the Eternall Newbie. So, yeah, those are the channels that I'm going to plug. None of these people know me. They don't know me. I'm just doing this out of the kindness of my heart, except Eternall Newbie. Me and Eternall Newbie do know each other. We've talked in the past. I've talked to him here on Discord before. He's a really good, down-to-earth guy. And he's funny. I mean, he is a funny guy, and he knows a lot of like pop culture references. So that, yeah. So
yeah,
we get along
I guess
really
if
well.
we're gonna plug other people's channels that we don't necessarily know that are related to D&D, I'm gonna plug some, but they're gonna be less of the storytelling side and more of the like, I guess doing things like painting your figures or painting your terrains and stuff.
Oh yeah, your miniatures and
Yeah,
stuff.
your miniatures, your set pieces. Check out Real Terrain Hobbies and Goobertown Hobbies. They both do pretty good stuff. They got like tutorials and things like that. They show off set pieces, reviews. So,
and also hopefully in the future I get a channel going where I can just, I don't know. I might just call it story time, or I don't know what I'll call the channel yet. Maybe I'll just call it Demo
Legends of
Gamers.
Loxos.
Yeah, something. But yeah,
you can have that.
But
trademark. TM.
Trademark. That's trademark by number one, Ricky Bobby.
If you don't chew Big Red, then fuck you.
Jack off. Anyway, so, but no, prune candy. Okay. But yeah, my channel will be mainly just me telling the story of Loxos. It will be just the story of Loxos and a rather relevant thing that's happening, in it at this time, and that'll be this campaign.
And then whatever next relevant
we've got pretty much
happens.
like 5 years into it right now, which is pretty huge.
We've been playing it for a minute.
A lot of groups don't stay together that long, and we have. So It'll be.
Well, the thing
I've
is
got a
that
lot
I
of
feel
content
like
that I
not
can
only
bring
have
back.
our characters grown, but we've grown as people too. And that's
Yeah.
what's cool about D&D.
It is.
I
It
think
is
it's
good.
helped me grow as a person a lot, you know? So yeah,
Yeah.
there's that.
And like I said, I'm not trying to be preachy or anything, but
Nah, whatever.
you know, I wanted to talk about
Something you
creating a
felt was
pantheon.
important.
Yeah, creating a pantheon and how important your alignments can be to that pantheon, how important your pantheon is to your homebrew world, and how you shouldn't just cut either one of them out completely. I mean, advice. This is advice. Don't cut them both out completely. Just don't.
Right.
Give yourself interesting gods and give yourself interesting alignments.
Because it'll
And
make
do
your
that.
games more interesting.
And if you don't like doing, lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, blah blah blah, combine some of them. Just say, okay, in my world there is lawful good and then there is neutral good. And boom, chaotic good can go out. That's like, well, then how do you have the Punisher? Well, neutral good.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just make neutral good that chaotic sense where you can slide back and forth between that and so on and so forth.
Well, some
Or you
people
just
would say, what's the difference? Right? And I think the difference to some degree is that neutral is, well, chaotic is I will do anything. I will do what I feel like it takes to meet this goal, regardless of
to
what
do the
that
right
is,
thing.
to do that right thing. To do what I think is right. And
you could think of General
that's
Patton
the Punisher.
from
Yeah.
World War. Yeah, you could think of General Patton from World War II as chaotic good.
Right.
Yes. So.
To some degree, yeah.
Anyways, okay. Well.
But yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up here. I guess thanks for watching. Like, favorite, and subscribe. Hate to be this annoying fucker, but hit the bell icon. So you could get updates notifications when we upload. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome, man. Anytime. This was fun. I had a good time.
Yeah, me too. Well,
ranting on some of this stuff.
Shit, we sat here and talked about D&D for 3 hours. What's that shit, right? But
yeah, next time, man. Maybe I'll my thing will be wrestling. Like I said,
right.
Next time I'm on, maybe I'll talk about wrestling and
right,
how I feel about this and that. So,
well, all right.
Some particular thing. You know what I think about the Undertaker? He's a prick.
He was a prick.
Everybody's like, oh, he's the phenom. But somewhere out there's some guy sitting around who wrestled him back in like the indie days, and he's like, I know Markello. A prick.
He was a prick.
I've heard the Undertaker actually behind the scenes was actually a really nice guy for the most part.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So anyways,
but all right, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end this. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.